Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever it is that you are watching from. It is the first round of the Champion Motorsport Virtual World Sports Car Championship 1991, and where better a location to start this incredible season than from Daytona International Speedway on the 24-hour circuit. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Jake Sanson here with you. What a privilege it is to watch these Group C monstrosities pound around the circuit in full throat-ridden anger. It is brilliant to see them with some incredible drivers taking to this 1991 season. The purists, the pros, and the amateurs are going to lock horns and go to battle around this phenomenal circuit. 28 degrees Celsius temperatures at the moment, so it's absolutely perfect conditions to get the most out of these cars. And we've got 17 minutes remaining in time qualifying. All eyes are going to be on the purists, of course. They want to be right up at the sharp end. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of focus on some of the big names. The Kowalski Motorsports teams, of course, made up of the Swiss ace Manuel Stoll and the Polish driver Jacob Kowalski. The Nuki Monsters are, of course, the driving team that was declared champion in the 1971 season, last time out with their man Ross Smith. And obviously the second driver, Ben Borman, who was in Rookie Monsters back in the time. And we'll keep an eye out for several teams as they push themselves around the course. We'll obviously be keeping an eye on the Lucky Strike Mazda Racing team with their young American charge, William Miller, alongside George Angelidis. But we're going to have some incredible things to talk about over the course of proceedings. I'm Jake Sanson, the eye in the sky, keeping an eye on everything, not just on our cameras, but also on the shenanigans in and around the pit lane and paddock, is Troy Yuyan, and we're going to have a very interesting time. Troy Uyan, it's going to be a very interesting battle that we'll see from these Group C cars as they wend their way around the circuit here at Daytona. Plenty to talk about, plenty to do, and for Steve Carman, he's already got a bit of a handful in qualifying.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we have no traction control for these guys. It's as authentic as it can be, right? So the difficulty of the cars to drive will be on display, and you will see a lot of wheel spin, a lot of people counter-steering and trying to control these beasts, and they are really beasts to drive.
They sound absolutely glorious, as I'm sure you'll agree, ladies and gentlemen. All of the fantastic noises, sounds and colours and spectacles that you'll see around the circuit, brought to you, of course, in association with Storm Gang Simulations. These guys really have been working overdrive to bring these cars to your screens for this 1991 season of the Virtual World Sports Car Championship. And I tell you what, these things are absolutely gorgeous and blissful to watch. You can see the real snap of oversteer when the cars start to get loose on the far side. As I mentioned earlier, we've got three classes to talk you through as well. The purists, the pros, and the AMs. Now, what is the difference? Well, the AM drivers are obviously the competitive class that I would fit into, the guys that are still wet behind the ears and trying to get up to speed. They have light driving aids, as far as I'm told. Perhaps, I believe, from what I hear, it is R-Factor setting 1 for traction control. So it's still very, very tough to drive, but at least they have a little bit of help in order to improve their stature. We won't be seeing too many of them up at the sharp end, although they might be starting to threaten the top 10 from time to time in terms of raw one-lap pace. The pro class, well, that is as it sounds. These guys are incredibly quick, very, very fast racers, and they will be challenging for the overall victory without any hesitation. The purist class, there are 11 cars signed up for this one, and they are the drivers that have literally gone about this hardcore. Not only do they have the full rig, wheels and pedals, they even have the H-pattern gearbox and everything that comes with it. These guys are absolutely living it on the edge, Troy, and we'll see some incredible dexterity from these drivers today.
It's sort of insane, actually, that they are racing with a H pattern, because that's not common, you know, in our modern day sim racing. It's all paddles, it's auto blip, auto clutch with all these sim things. It's obviously, of course, still difficult to drive, but these guys have taken it to a sort of X Factor extreme level. And you can see just there, Paul getting a little squirrely. That's going to happen the entire race. There will always be little moments like that, even in close battles or things that have settled down. Everything will always be on edge.
Yeah, these guys are definitely going to be flirting with the limits all the way through the qualifying and race trim battles that we are going to see throughout in this one. It really will be a sensational battle that the competitors have got to deal with. Let's look at how things currently stack up in time qualifying. Ben Borman in the Peugeot 905 is currently leading the way from Bas Zwartenbol and Wouter de Bruin in the 962 Porsches that are next up. Luciano Icazo is next up in the Sauber Mercedes, and then Kari Keskinen in the Nissan R90C, currently in 5th position. Rogier de Clean is in 6th position ahead of Marouane El Idrissi in the Nissan R90C. Then Donat Prodan, Roy de Munk and Manuel Stoll, who hasn't really given us the full weight of that Sauber Mercedes just yet. Expect big things from the Kowalski Motorsport pairing. They've been lightning quick all the way through practice and showcasing what they can do. There's Donat Prodan, who is currently in the Porsche 962C machine, and the light orange and silver machine is definitely going to be a real factor in this one. I think it's just dialing up for a lap, but obviously the best lap currently at the moment is a 1:33.057, and you can see some real tank slappers coming from the drivers. They're not even on the fast lap yet for Donat Prodan. He's had a lap or two already. His best is a 1:34.728, so still about 1.7 seconds away from the pace. But as we get closer and closer to the edge of time qualifying, those times are going to tumble. So it's going to be a really fascinating battle that the competitors are going to be giving us throughout. And we'll see some great camera views as well. Luciano Icazo in the Sauber Mercedes, the T-Sport machine going his way through. This is a really fabulous viewpoint. Let's have a listen in. So natural and raw, that raspy sound. Drivers are still trying to get the hang of it. You can see drivers still dropping it and kicking up some grass as they get through. It's so easy to lose these cars, even in a straight line, Troy, because essentially once you get out of the mid-apex of the corner, you are trying to test yourself as to when you can get back on the power. But these cars are so brutal on acceleration that you get a massive tank of wheel spin as you come off the corner. And the center of gravity changes so quickly in these things that it's every ounce of strength and muscle that you have in your upper body just to try and keep this thing in a straight line.
The tough part we have here is this is a very busy track. There's a lot of people on this track. It's not the longest track. There's a lot of straight line running, obviously. So finding clean track is a challenge in its own. We have a 20-minute qualifying session. It's already half over. So you got to find the clean track, the clean space, and then once you have it, that is an opportunity you don't want to waste. You are going to push it and do push it a little bit too far and waste that beautiful track. But we have something like this, where you also get a draft on these long straights, and this has just increased several tenths Luciano's lap time.
So obviously it's going to be a very busy season in the Virtual World Sports Car Championship 1991 calendar. We're here for the 2.4 hours of Daytona. It is a 24-hour cycle in 1/10 of the time, so we're going to get 2.4 hours racing tonight. Hopefully I won't bore you rigid for too much of that, but I'm sure Troy and I will find things to talk about as Luciano Icazo loses the back end of the car on this particular fast lap, having just gone top as well, a 1:32.961 for him. So that's a lap thrown away, unfortunately. Manuel Stoll has just gone up to second, and Ben Borman has just come up into third to showcase the real speed demons are coming up to it. Now let's see if Manuel Stoll can use the slipstream he's just got off the Jaguar to make this one the fastest time as we go into the second half of qualifying. Is this going to be a time good enough for the top spot? It is indeed. A 1:32.961 was the time. Now it is a 1:32.946. So Manuel Stoll goes up to the top spot in the Kowalski Sauber Mercedes, and we're going to see the sister car in amongst that top five very soon indeed, if practice is anything to go by. And Manuel Stoll does exactly the same thing, just as his teammate Jacob Kowalski goes fastest. I did say that they were going to be flirting with the top spot, and their first big flying lap of qualifying, Troy, they are 1 and 2. No major shocks there.
It's not, and the crazy thing again, these guys are in the Purist class, right? So they're doing this with the H pattern, with the manual clutch, and the pro drivers have the exact same cars. So it makes it that much more impressive that the Purist drivers are topping the times, not by the smallest of margins either. The second pro driver is 8/10 off these leaders. The top 4 are split by just 2/10. It's so close, and they're doing it with H patterns.
Well, absolutely phenomenal. I mean, these guys really have been spectacular right from the get-go. Really exciting to see. So, Jacob Kowalski now on the top spot. Manuel Stoll second place. Luciano Icazo in third place from Ben Borman and Wouter de Bruin. And then Marouane El Idrissi and Rogier de Cleen. Donat Prodan in 8th place from Roy de Munk and Baz Swartenbol. Apologies if early doors my pronunciations are not quite what they should be. It is round 1 of the 1991 championship. I'm hoping to get it right by the time we get to the end of the season at least. Opportunities to change pronunciations, answers on a postcard please. It's going to be a fabulous season. We start obviously here at Daytona, and then on March the 5th we go to the 1.2 hours of Sebring on the fabulous Sebring circuit, and then of course we go to Suzuka for the 230 kilometers. That is on April 16th. That will take about 78 minutes roughly, and then on May the 7th it'll be the Monza 230k. That'll be about the 66 minutes roughly of racing if everything is to go by. And then of course on May the 21st, the big one, the 2.4 hours of Le Mans on the Circuit de la Sarthe. It is the capital city of motorsport. Doesn't matter who you speak to around the world, if you talk about Le Mans, you know that you're in business. Then we have the Silverstone 230 kilometers. That is on July the 9th. And then we have the Nürburgring in Germany on August the 20th. Then we go to MAK Corp in France on September the 17th. Some really retrograde circuits, some proper places, cathedrals of speed for these magic monsters. And then we have on October the 15th, the Mexico circuit at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, and that 230 kilometer race there as well, before finishing off at Autopolis, a fabulous location in Japan, on October the 29th. This is set to be a fabulous season with an incredible calendar and some amazing machines. There's Rogier de Cleen, just bringing the Scuderia Porsche out onto the circuit again. The fabulous pink and purple color scheme. It's one of the most striking of the cars out on the circuit. Great to see Roger de Cleen putting it up in the top 10 already. That's one of the other beautiful things about this championship as well. Not only have you got these incredible cars that sound spectacular, but the liveries that the teams create. There's always something fascinating about the world of esports. You really let your passion and your creativity flow, Troy. And in the 1991 Virtual World Sports Car Championship season opener here at Daytona, we have had an absolute plethora of artistic creativity and passionate expression.
Yeah, anyone who has the Photoshop chops is working with their drivers and making these custom liveries. They're from scratch, right? So these aren't default things. People are designing their own liveries, they're putting their own sponsors, they're making it authentic, they're making it personal, they're making it funny, they're making it cool. So there's absolutely that expression. Ben's got a lot of traffic here as well, and he did go P1 in that last sequence by 0.4 of a second. So just insane lap from Ben, and again, you wonder, did that slipstream have a hand here? Because it gets so busy on track. If you get the slipstream lined up with traffic perfectly, you're in for mega time.
Well, Ben Borman is definitely one of the competitors to watch out there on the circuit. 4 wins last season, currently tied with the most wins in class in the Virtual World Sports Car historic competition. The other one, of course, being Wouter de Bruin in the pro category. So Ben Borman definitely one to watch as he battles away with Jacob Kowalski and Manuel Stoll, the Kowalski Motorsports cars. But the Nuki Monsters Peugeot is definitely one we're going to have to keep an eye on here at Daytona. He's going to be up at the sharp end, putting on an excellent display. Now, of course, with it being 2.4 hours, the longest race of the season, which will happen twice over the year here at Daytona, and of course at Le Mans in France on May the 21st as well, what you're going to get to see is a full rotation of the day into night into day battle and display of racing as always. So these guys are obviously going to be pushing it very hard, but there are no driver changes. It is a one-man show, and these guys are going to push it. Look at just how hard Jacob Kowalski is leaning into the apex on the banking there. As he now travels down the back straight, he'll chop it to the left, right, left of the dogleg at the bus stop chicane here as he gets himself back up to speed. On board with Kowalski. Back on the power and on the banking. Pick a line and balance the car as much as possible.
And you can see it's not even stable on the banking. They're having to fight it, at full throttle.
That's very true. Yeah, the car wants to snap away just in a straight line. Kowalski comes across the line. That's not the pole position lap yet, but look at just how much he's having to stand on it on the brakes just to try and hold the car through. That first left-hander, a dash of curb, and it snaps the car away. He might as well be driving in the wet for the amount of physicality this car is giving him at the moment, but he is on top of it. Nice and steady, but he runs a little bit deep onto the grass again. Snatches a little bit of oversteer, keeps the car nice and planted as he goes across the curb on the left side, back onto the power again, and then onto the brakes here. Wait for it, gentle, gentle. Now a little bit of application of throttle, then you stab on the pedal, a little bit more, back on the brakes, but you cannot afford to lock here. Look, you can see the car snapping from side to side. It basically skews away, left, right, under brakes. You've got to have a little bit more handle on it. Even on the bank in here, we can see it's not just as easy as tipping to the inside line, because the car wants to travel to the wall. It wants to get spat out to the outside line. So you're constantly having to blip the throttle just ever so delicately. We're talking a millimetre or two here and there just to keep the car stable and planted, whilst also wrestling with the wheel, because you've got so much adhesion as you're going through that hairpin. The car just wants to snap away. Final turn. Again, you're just dancing with that ribbon on the inside apex. The car wants to snap away every single opportunity it gets. But Kowalski is an equal measure to it. He's got to find 0.4 of a second over the lap, but he's been wrestling with it. What's his lap time going to be? I can tell you on this occasion, he hasn't been able to beat it. A 1:32.390. That is still a lap good enough to be second place in its own right. But that just shows you how much time you lose just with all of that squabbling around on the steering wheel. He could even have got to pole position had that been just the tiniest bit smoother.
He was giving it everything, and you almost wonder if he gave it too much. He's got 0.4 to make up. There's also the factor here that he had clean track, right? Like I was talking about. You have so many cars on track, but you have clean track, so you want to capitalize on it. So he's absolutely going for it, though. You can see every single time.
Oh, I'm afraid that's not going to be a pole lap there, Jacob, and I don't know if he's going to have enough time to get back to the start line to get another lap in, especially as now. Oh, Jacob, so close to catching it, but it just goes away from him, and he knows that he's not going to be able to get out for another one. Jacob Kowalski will not get pole position for the Daytona 2.4 hours. So what about Roy de Moink? What is he going to be able to produce? Comes through in the Porsche 962. Not a bad second sector for him. First run, he got a 1:33.2, so he's only a second and a half away. Easy enough to find that with the right applications of throttle in the apexes. Carries so much speed into the left part of the dogleg here, and then you have to really correct the car and balance it without using too much brake. You have to basically dash at the brake and rely on the engine's natural deceleration to slow you down and get you into a good position back on the upshift. As Ben Borman improves his time, a 1:31.6 for Ben Borman. That is absolutely magic for the Nookie Monsters Peugeot. I don't really see anybody realistically getting close enough to that to snatch pole position away. He seems very planted. I think the only one really who's going to have a chance to make that stick is probably going to be Manuel Stoll, I would think. But he's not really been able to challenge quite to the same sort of pace as Jacob Kowalski. He's still a good 0.6 of a second away from that. But Ben Borman here at Daytona, he might as well be in a scale extric race at the moment here, Troy, because he is absolutely planted in the groove. He doesn't look even the slightest bit out of sorts. This has got one hand on the pole position trophy already.
Yeah, I wanted to go on board with him as well, because he definitely seems to have the car a lot more planted than Kowalski did. And obviously that's going to have an impact. The sooner you get on the power, the sooner you go. I also noticed he has potentially some very, very trimmed downforce, obviously, which you want here at Daytona. There's so much straight line running. And he's able to wrestle it through the corners. He's so smooth on the wheel through that bus stop and everything. And he's potentially has the very, very, very low trim. And maybe a car that's a little better in the straights too.
Absolutely. I mean, that's looking at the way he is on the wheel by comparison. It's the difference between night and day, isn't it? I mean, he just looks so smooth and very, very massive fluidity on the wheel as he comes through and across the line. He doesn't need to improve his time, and yet he does. A 1:31.503 just to prove the point, I think. He found a little bit more time even on that last time lap as well. But good work from Wouter de Bruin in the Porsche 962. He manages to split the Kowalskis to go into third position there. Luciano Riccardo and Roy de Moink managing to finish up the top 6 after a very competitive session. That's it. Time is up in the time qualifying session then. So we can have a bit of a run through. Obviously, it's so overly subscribed today. We've had to split it across 2 servers, would you believe? But we're going to focus, obviously, on the main server where we have the bulk of our competitors. Big crowds, obviously, expected here online. You thought I was going to talk about the ones in the stands, didn't you? Great to see that there's so many great people watching along on the stream and already starting to enjoy the Virtual World Sports Car Championship. Here's the roundup after qualifying. Ben Borman ahead of Jacob Kowalski, Wouter de Bruin in the Porsche, along with Manuel Stoll in the second Kowalski Sauber. Then Luciano Riccardo in the eSport AMG Sauber Mercedes from Roy de Moink. Then it is Roger de Klein, Kari Keskinen, Marwan El Idrisi, and rounding up the top 10, it is Baz Zvortenbal. Behind them, it is Donat Prodan in 11th place ahead of Ross Smith in the second of the Nookie Monsters Peugeots, John Uyan and Jason Whitehead, and then George Angelidis in front of Leone Gianari, then Eric Moynier and Paul Venter from Jacques Vermeulen, and Steve Carman in P20. Behind them, there's even more talent to come. Jerry Chen in front of Brian Hall, one of the 2 Hall brothers Jaguars. Yuri Geeson is next up, along with Gilles Lalonde, and then Tom Aiken ahead of Joe Miller. Mark Jones is in front of Maximilian Petravki, and then Brandon Gant ahead of Matthew Sibagnoni in the Sauber Mercedes in P30. P31, it is Guy Sever from Stephen Miller, I should say, Tom Mountjoy and James Bunn, and then Johan Taveras from Graham Duncombe, William Miller, Eugene Mazur, Oscar Dancourt, and Santiago Dancourt down in 40th position. And that is just about all she wrote for this particular server, other than Ahmed Abdallah, who is in the Sauber Mercedes number 31. The Daytona 2.4 hours definitely going to give us plenty of excitement. It is a full capacity grid, and the cars are just getting ready for their 10-minute warm-up at this point. So all the times are reset, but at least now we know that it's going to be Ben Borman in pole position, certainly looking ready for the scrap. It'd be great to have your comments and your messages. I'll try and keep up with them as much as we possibly can over the course of the stream. But definitely a fabulous start to proceedings here in the 1991 Virtual World Sports Car Championship. I'm Jake Sanson. Beside me is Troy Uyan, and we're going to have a really fantastic battle as the competitors gear themselves up for the 2.4 hours of Daytona. Now, one of the things we obviously have to take into consideration here, Troy, is that we're obviously going to have a simulated race, but it's a simulated time rotation as well. So it's 2.4 hours, but it will feel like a shortened 24 hours to the drivers out there. Very much in the vintage style of the Le Mans 24 Hours game you used to have on the PlayStation 2, a big favorite of mine back in the day. But these guys are definitely going to be very, very exciting to watch, because all it's going to take is one major blip, and they're going to be absolutely out of sorts for the rest of the battle.
We have the situation here as well with these cars are not as, let's say, sturdy as like an LMP1 car or a modern GT car, right? So suspension damage is a real thing. The walls are close. The tails are snappy. There's 41 cars on the grid here, and this is just the one server. It's just the one. We have so much turnout here. So thank you, of course, to the viewers and the drivers, of course, for coming out to this event. It's so cool to have you all here with us.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, and we can see that the drivers are just getting themselves dialed in. Now, this is the warm-up session, obviously. They've only got 10 minutes to kind of finish things up and dial things in. Now, I have a feeling that things are going to be a bit busier at Kowalski Motorsport in terms of adjusting setup than over at Nookie Monsters Peugeot, because they seem to be pretty much perfectly dialed in for Ben Borman. But for Jacob Kowalski and Manuel Stoll, they've got some homework to do after qualifying. We could see just how physical it was for Jacob Kowalski in particular to wrestle with that steering wheel, to try and find those few extra tenths of a second. Ben Borman was barely turning the wheel at all. He was looking a lot more Fangio than Gilles Villeneuve out there. I'll tell you, again, Ben Borman really starting to look like the potential victor. But one lap pace is one thing. Can you sustain it over 2.4 hours? And of course, will he be able to manage the traffic? Because there's 3 classes within the race. They're all in the same equipment in terms of the balance of performance, grade of machinery. Obviously, they're all in slightly different Group C cars. But the way it's worked out means you've got 3 different classes of driver out on the circuit at the same time. You have the purists with their clutch pedals and H-pattern gearboxes who are really going at this as if it really was 1991. And then you've got the pro drivers who are obviously pushing it to the absolute limit like the proper sim racer probably should. And then you've got the AM class who are still gearing their way up to it. And check that out. In the top 5, we've got 4 purists up there in a field full of pros. And the margin for error is much, much bigger in the purist category, Troy, than it is in the pro category. Expect some fireworks early on.
And we have this mix of cars, right? So the cars all have what we call smart BOP, where there are different ways that we balance the cars. So obviously we had cars that were a little faster on the straights and other cars that were more of a handful in the corners. Setup obviously plays a huge factor. Cars can also have different tire compounds, not just tire compounds, tire manufacturers that have different characteristics. We've really gone on all out, to make every aspect of this, sort of as realistic as it can get. So we have, it's not just, the 1 lap pace, like you said, but throughout the race. And right now, by the way, we'll be having a driver's briefing, which we are not privy to, but they will be discussing, going over the rules one more time. There's 40 cars here and there's 40 angry cars here, right? So we want to make sure that everyone's on the same page about where the race goes live, which will be a full pace lap. So we will not have a standing start. We will have a full pace lap through the entire course. When the leader crosses the start finish line, the leader can then proceed and the race is live. So we want to go over all those rules. No one's on track because we want to make sure people are obviously paying attention to the briefing. Everyone's just coming off of that high on qualifying, right? Us as well. So we want to calm everybody down, get that driver's briefing, go over what we call the orange zone, which is going to take place through the majority of sector 1 and into sector 2. So sort of the infield section of here at Daytona. The orange zone is a place during the race, the first lap, where everything is automatically reviewed. Any piece of contact, there's not even a protest necessary if someone bumps you. The admins will go back and review everything because this is a long race and people get very excited. We want to avoid those first lap collisions. So there's sort of just like you could almost call it a light caution, or just a warning to be cautious, right? It's a long race. Everybody's excited, especially in this series. The cars are so difficult to drive. We want to make sure we get through that first infield section and onto the banking. And then you're free to fully push it. Not that you can't race in the beginning, but we do want to make sure we get a good start here at the 2.4.
Well, totally true. And you've got to remember, of course, that the first lap, it's that age-old adage of motor racing, isn't it? You can't win on lap 1, but you can definitely lose. So you've got to be incredibly careful what your strategy is at the start of the race. But check out the distance between Ben Borman and Jacob Kowalski, 0.7 of a second for the lap. That is absolutely gargantuan in terms of 1 lap pace. But as we mentioned before, all it takes is for one back marker to be in the wrong place at the wrong time for Ben Borman, for the pit stop to not quite go according to plan, for whatever it might be. Then obviously it is still game over. But it's worth keeping an eye on the fact that in 1991, of course, there wasn't a pit lane speed limit. So, Troy, there is not going to be a pit lane speed limit in these cars either. So for a lot of drivers, it's kind of unholy territory. They've kind of got to figure out how to get their stopping distances right when they come full pelt into the pits. And that's actually going to be a lot harder than if they were to have a limited speed in the pits.
Yeah, it's so interesting because this is the first sim racing championship I can think of where we didn't have a pit speed limiter. Even when we played with the older cars, you always have a pit speed limiter. Just make sure that everybody's safe in the lane. In iRacing, for example, there is not collision detection in the pits. Here in R-Factor 2, we do have collision detection in the pits. So even when you're sitting at your box, you can still get rear-ended by someone, okay?
Yep.
So it is very crucial, like when we're having pit windows, for example, which we can talk about pit strategy a little bit as well. It's very crucial that we have the guys, knowing where their pit box is, which we will do a cycle here in a moment to get everybody acquainted with their pit box location. But also, they are hopefully have practiced this entry into Daytona. Coming off the banking into the pits in Daytona is hard in the first place to get it slowed down and to get control of it. There's this jolt as you come off the banking, obviously, even though it smooths out a little bit pre-pit lane, there's still a jolt. These cars, as we saw, don't like jolts. So we want to make sure that obviously people can get into the lane, but there's no pit speed limit. So you're going to have to regulate your own speed. How much do you push it? There's always time to be gained in the pits. There's absolutely always time to lose in the pits, and if you don't hit that right. It's such an interesting thing. So I believe what we're going to do here is we're going to have the drivers go out on track. They're going to do just a pause here to see where their pit stall is. The reason we're doing this is the server is very, very full. There's only a certain amount of pit boxes available in the server on the track, right? And even if you supersede the limit of cars to the pit boxes, there is still a chance that even if there's a free pit stall, you get doubled up. So what we're seeing here is the guys moving out to find their pit box, like we were just talking about. It's super important to know where your box is. Otherwise, you will have a very hard time when the pit lane is full figuring out. So it's a mental note, it's a practice, and obviously what people can do as well is do a lap here like we're seeing on screen. We believe that's Carrie. And Carrie will be able to practice that pit entry as well, which is another important aspect here as well.
Oh, absolutely. And this is the difference between winning and losing a race here. If you get the pit stop wrong and you're in the wrong pit box, or you get your preparation done incorrectly, then it's a massive game changer. You could lose laps if you're not careful, if you're getting this wrong, because obviously you then have other problems that can come into effect. You can damage your car by hitting a car as you come into the pit lane, and that is just no end of trouble that is slowly starting to brew. So you have to nail it right. There's Wouter de Bruin. He's going to be an interesting one to watch for. Third on the starting grid for the Daytona 2.4. So it's definitely going to be an interesting one for him, as he's going to be trying to split the guys on the front row of the starting grid. There's some big talent in this top six, actually. You've got Borman, who is 7/10 clear of the rest of the pack. Jacob Kowalski and Manuel Stoll in the two Kowalski Saubers. They're going to be big ones to watch in this one. There's Matthew Simeoni. It's not just going to be about the front runners. You're also going to see the guys in the mid-pack that will want to try and make up some progress. And as Troy's already mentioned, obviously on a rolling start, anything can happen. So you've got to be very, very careful about how you approach the first couple of corners. You've got Luciano Riccardo running in there with Roy de Moink and Roger de Kleen, Kari Keskinen, Marouane El Adrisi, and Baz Swartenwal, who will line up in the top 10. So there's plenty to do, plenty to talk about in this 2.4-hour race. And we're going to see some excellent performances from these Group C Magic machines. They are absolutely wonderful. And of course, with this being a 1991 Virtual World Sports Car Championship, there's going to be a handful of the drivers here who will not know what these cars are like in anger. I'm blessed by the fact that not only did I watch them briefly the first time around when I first got into motor racing in the 1992 motor racing season, but not only have I gone back to the Duke Video Archive and gone and found the World Sports Car Championship box set from the 1980s and the Le Mans 24 Hours box set as well, in preparation for my own turn in the Circuit de la South Coms box, but also the Silverstone Classic and the Goodwood Festival of Speed do give you a good chance to see these Group C cars in anger battling again. And I can tell you, there's nothing quite like these machines anywhere in the world. If you ask a sports car Puritan, when is the best era of sports car racing, they're always, nearly always going to say, well, it was Group C. Obviously, these cars are just absolutely phenomenal. They drowned in their own success, unfortunately, but it's wonderful that the world of esports racing can take us back to that phenomenal period of motor racing history, as we just watch Ross Smith in the Nookie Monster, just trying to get himself ready to go. You can see this is still a bit of a fine art for the drivers and teams, just trying to get themselves into the right position. And think about when they're doing this at speed, when they're trying to get themselves into their correct pit box and not have too many disasters. There's Donat Prodan. So Donat Prodan will be starting 10th for the 2.4. He's got a good chance of a podium here, actually. He was very consistent throughout practice. He wants to be in a good position right from the get-go. He's got a very solid and consistent car, the Porsche 962C. So obviously he's going to have a decent opportunity underneath his right foot. But he is one of the purists, so he's definitely going to find it very tough going right from the start.
There's an aspect here too, where since we have so many different cars, and between just the top 6, we have 3-4 different manufacturers. They may have different tire compounds, they may have different fuel durations that they can push. They're all fairly similar, but we can call a spade and say that they are not the same, right? So there's a difference here between someone's preparation in a Peugeot versus the Porsche, right? It's a different kind of preparation that they've done for pit strategy. What we have here is actually the legitimate warm-up that people are going through now that we've had the driver's briefing. We found some pit stalls. You saw some people still looking at their pit stall, like, let me just double check that I knew where this thing was. And we can see people starting to go on some proper warm-up laps, and now with full fuel, with their race starting tires. Obviously, in qualifying, everybody would have as a bit of a... So they're sort of braking like there is a pit speed limit. There actually is not. And you see some people coming in who know that there's not a pit speed limit. So it's absolutely the potential craziness that we may have on pit rotations
is that not the world's most sexiest traffic jam you've ever seen in your life?
It so is, actually. The cars look amazing. We have some drivers, again, this is the first sim racing championship I've been sim racing for years. I've never seen a championship that, even in historic championship, that didn't use the pit speed limiter in R Factor 2, for example. So it is going to be so interesting for people to try to break that habit for this series specifically. Because in the sister series, the 2022 championship, of course, it's modern. We still have the pit speed limiter. It's going to be very, very interesting for these guys to sort of navigate that, and it will have gone over again in the driver's briefing. But yeah, so what we have here as well in qualifying is everyone was obviously running whatever their option tire was, the softest compound they had. That may not, however, be the case during the race. Sorry, just give me one moment. Sorry about that. So that may not be the case during the race, and some tire manufacturers may have an option in a prime, and some tire manufacturers may have soft, medium, hard. And there's going to be the decision point here of, do you try to stretch a hard compound multiple stints? Do you change tires every stint to go soft, 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 for example? We're estimating here that there would be a 3-stint race, 1 stop and a shorter stop for a splash. I don't think they'll need a full load of fuel on the second stop, but I think there's a 98% chance that pretty much everybody, even unless they're very, very conservative, with these engines and their fuel consumption, they will need 2 stops. How big of a splash is that second fuel load? That is critical, because then it determines how long you're stationary, in the box, as well as the tires. Tires and fuel are not done simultaneously in this series. So we have people who are taking tires every stop and they're doing their fuel. They're not able to double up on that pit work. Fuel first, then tires. If you don't take tires, you're stationary for less time.
This is a very good point. Rapid Scorpion writes on the stream, Peugeot on pole, just where it should be. The Partisan Group C fans are coming out of the woodwork now. So we're going to see some fabulous racing from the Peugeots. Vive la France, c'est moi, is the headline in pole position, as it's going to be a little bit of c'est la guerre for everybody else if that Peugeot continues to blast away up in the front end. More French references will be coming in as the stream goes on, I'm sure. Helps being half French, doesn't it? Ben Borman in first position from Jacob Kowalski, Wouter de Bruyne and Luciano Icazo, just banging in some laps out at the moment on the circuit. This is one heck of a cathedral of speed as well. The Daytona International Speedway circuit, the 24-hour circuit, you get that real combination and fine blend of twisty, tight and technical with some great overtaking opportunities whilst blending it in with the very brutal banked oval. This is a tough race circuit. There's no two ways about it. It's the ultimate place to start a championship because you really have got every single type of corner laid out before you. And setup here is critical. Do you maximize speed in the fast banking parts of the course, or do you maximize mechanical grip in the infield section where you can lose a heck of a lot more time? So it's definitely going to be very interesting to see how the teams and drivers go about it. Gilles Lalonde in car number 32, just trying to work his way through the pack. He's just done a 28.5 on his first sector of the lap, so not a bad position for him to be in. Jason Whitehead for the Storm Rider Racing Nissan, though, is the fastest driver in warm-up in Sector 1 at the moment. Has just bunged in a 27.3. So obviously some slight indications of what we're going to see. Tom Aiken rocking the Bud Light colours of the Jaguar. Great to see that back again. I don't think I've seen that car since about 1992. So great to see that colour scheme resplendent on the machine again. Here's the man who will start from pole position. A massive amount of confidence to take into the race. But qualifying is one thing, and racing is quite a different thing. Ben Borman will not be racing on the laurels. He'll take a little bit of a feather in the cap to know that he was 7/10 clear of everybody else in qualifying, but it's a 2.4-hour race. You really have got a tough mission on your hands. And we are live here from Daytona International Speedway, 28 degrees Celsius at the present moment. That's the track temperature, of course. The air temperature is about 21 degrees Celsius at the present moment in time. So we're definitely going to have a pretty tricky race out there for the drivers. They will know that this first lap is going to be absolutely critical. Don't expect too many banzai maneuvers on lap 1. It's a long race. They know what's expected of them. And whilst they do want track position, they also want to make sure that they maintain that in a car that's still drivable, as Ben Borman bangs in a 1:33.6 in warm-up. That shows you how committed he is. There's Ross Smith, his teammate, in the 00. Ross Smith wanting to get a similar sort of lap pace. He didn't do badly in qualifying in Ross Smith. He just wasn't quite able to get the sort of lap time that he would have felt was necessary to be closer up to the sharp end. But let's not forget that Ross Smith is one of the purists out there in the course. There are a few others to take into consideration, of course, as well. But certainly for Ross Smith, it's going to be a tough one. He goes 5th in the warm-up session. I made a brief mention of them earlier on in the stream, but it is worth trying to keep an eye on the Lucky Strike Mazdas in numbers 14 and 15, respectfully, because you've got young William Miller, the American driver, youngest on the grid. He joined as a development driver to partner beside George Angelidis, and this is obviously the Lucky Strike Mazda team still making their attempts to look for a third experienced driver to complete the lineup and fight for the championship, and that is a time of writing as well. They are still hunting for a third experienced driver. So if you feel R Factor 2 Group C machines, well, I can handle them, you know who to find. Go and get in touch with George Angelidis, and who knows, by the time we come around for Sebring in March, you'll have had plenty of testing time under your belt. There could be a drive in it for you. So there's an ongoing application at Lucky Strike Mazda. So that is a good opportunity. The Hall brothers are in this particular squad as well. You've got Brian Hall, who is a purist, and then obviously Lanny Hall, who is in the pro category. So the two teammates are obviously going to be together. They're not the only siblings that are in the race either, because you've got Oscar and Santiago Dancourt in the Écurie Peruvienne Porsche team. And the two Peruvian drivers, Oscar and Santiago, they are the two sibling pairings competing in the Virtual World Sports Car Championships 1991, alongside the Hall brothers. Halls brothers, I should say, rather than the Hall brothers, because they are Halls. And then the Boyce brothers competing in modern Virtual World Sports Car Championship makes it 3 sibling pairings that are actively competing in Champion Motorsports at this moment in time. There's Marwan El Idrisi. So El Idrisi looking very strong indeed in the Nissan. That car looking absolutely gorgeous out there on track. Checkered flag in the warm-up, and Borman is 1.6 clear of a certain Jacob Kowalski. So Jacob Kowalski nowhere near as close to him in warm-up as in qualifying. That's not going to be a problem. And it's certainly not going to be a panic station as far as Jacob Kowalski is concerned. But certainly Ben Borman in the Peugeot, run by the Nookie Monsters, looking particularly strong as we head to the main event.
And that will have given everybody a good opportunity there after the driver's briefing, after the, everybody find your pit stall musical chairs moment. We've come to the point here where they were able to get some running on track with full fuel, whatever they're going to start the race with, and now we're gridding up. So we're going to have a full formation lap, and then we're live.
This is it, baby. You've waited long enough. 2.4 hours of the Daytona International Speedway, 24-hour circuit, and it's the greatest sports cars in the world. Don't argue. You know it's right. The Group C's are going to take to the track, and think of the roar and thunder of these cars as they blast across the start-finish line to begin 2.4 hours of racing at high-octane motorsport level. This is going to be absolutely awesome. Ben Borman puts the Peugeot into pole position. Jacob Kowalski in the Sauber Mercedes in second place. His teammate, Manuel Stoll, is on the second row beside Wouter de Bruyn, who will be third position on the grid in the leading Porsche. Then Luciano Icazo, who we are on board with on this shot, in fifth position alongside Roy de Moink. And then it is Roger de Klein, Kari Keskinen, Marwan El Idrisi, and Baz Sportenball in the top 10. From Dana Prodan, Ross Smith, Jason Whitehead, George Angelidis, Leonie Gennari, Eric Monnier, Paul Venter, Jacques Vermeulen, and Steve Carman, and Jerry Chen. That's your top 20. Then, of course, it will be Brian Hall, Yuri Geisen, Gilles Lalonde, Tom Aiken, Mark Jones, Maxi Petravki, Brandon Gant, Matthew Sivagnoni, Guy Severt, Stephen Miller, and Tom Mountjoy. Some incredible races to come as these guys are going to push it right from the start. We are going to have the one lap around the circuit, which of course is going to... penalty apparently for Kowalski. That's going to be corrected because obviously they're going to go around the outer perimeter for this rolling lap that was already confirmed as they go through, so ignore the penalty signs that are going on there. This is all as expected because they are being permitted to go around the outer banking for the rolling start. And then obviously they will come onto the main straight and blast onto the sports car circuit for the start of racing in the 2.4 hour. And this is definitely going to be very exciting from the get-go, Troy, because these guys know what's at stake, and this is a very long race, the longest race of the 1991 season alongside the 2.4 hours of Le Mans. So expect the unexpected as these drivers are going to be pushing it to the limit on the ragged edge from the green.
I don't know what's happened to our leading man, Ben. I don't know if we're going to have a reset here, because it does look like a few people did get DQ'd, not just penaltied.
Yeah,
DQ'd.
I think they are going to have a quick reset. I wonder if there was a slight issue, because of course we've had to make the decision quite late to split the servers because of how popular the interest in the race was. So that could have been one of the slight issues behind it. But don't worry, folks, it is going to get going very soon indeed, as the competitors will obviously be put into their positions ready for the start here at the Daytona 2.4 hours of the Virtual World Sports Car Championship 1991 by Champions Motorsports, brought to you by the boys and girls at Storm Gang Simulations. Here they come out onto the circuit once again, and hopefully this time there's not going to be too many hiccups ahead of racing. The cars will be put into their positions on the starting grid. Ben Borman will be pole position, of course, in the Nookie Monsters Peugeot with a 7/10 of a second lap faster than Jacob Kowalski in the first of the two Kowalski Motorsports Sauber Mercedes machines. But there is still a long, long race ahead of them. 28 degrees track temperature, 21 degrees air temperature, that's in Celsius, of course, and they will be given the command to go around the course for their rolling lap. We're told there is a warm-up session going in. Maybe that is the ability for them to do that and go up into position. We will get a bit of an update as we are ready in position. But obviously the drivers are heading out onto the circuit very soon indeed for the Daytona 2.4 hours. And we've seen some incredible performances from our guys and girls out there on the circuit. But this rivalry between Borman and Kowalski is going to be very strong.
Sorry about that, Jake. I'm going to venture a guess here that we're having a little bit of an issue with the launch of the race. I don't know if it's because there's so many cars, or if there's a timing issue. Because we did have that sort of false start, if you will, where people did get DQ'd. And this has maybe screwed up the qualifying results. So now we need to sort of maybe manually, on the formation lap, get back in order. It's going to take a lot of communication. There's 40 cars on track. There's 40 people in Discord. We're going to have to sort of figure this out manually. Will.
Old school, well then.
Old school it is.
Old school style.
What a series to do it on as well.
Absolutely. Where's Pat Benatar when you need her? We need all fired up playing in the background. Oh, YouTube, you have to rob us of all the joy and the fun. Anyway, Borman and Kowalski on the front row of the grid. De Bruyn and Manuel Stoll from Luciano Riccardo and Roy de Moink. Then Roger de Kleen, Kari Keskinen, Marouane Eladrisi, and Baz Swartenbol. There's your top 10. It's going to be a very interesting start when we get going around this Daytona International Speedway 24-hour circuit and 2.4 hours of racing will get us underway. I think we are now in operation for the rolling start. There's Wouter de Bruyn getting the car up and rolling. And hopefully now we'll get the cars to go around in their formation and they will be able to run on the circuit. Now, expect them this time. I would be surprised. I wouldn't be too surprised to go around the sports car circuit. Maybe the plan was originally, you see, the plan was originally to use the outer banking to get them gridded up, but clearly R Factor 2 decided that's not the actual racetrack we're using, folks. So now they actually have to. Now they actually have to use the sports car circuit for the rolling lap. Fair enough. It was a good attempt. But we obviously have to go and allow R Factor to figure out where the race circuit actually is. You'd have thought they'd be giving us that little bit of leniency, but never mind. We will get ourselves gridded up in the right order. And it's going to be Borman versus Kowalski from the off.
So yeah, we're going to follow the full circuit detail as laid out. Obviously, there are penalties for going off the track, and if you're on the wrong track, on the wrong layout, the server logic doesn't like that so much. So we got it all figured out now. We're doing the full pace lap. I assume they will do the full bus stop chicane as well. I believe you might want to be getting green as soon as possible because we have this 2.4 hour limit. So, hey, let's make the pace lap a little bigger because it is a full pace lap. Sometimes we have a partial pace lap where the race will kind of start in sector 3 or something at a particular apex. Well, here we have a full pace lap. It's starting at the start-finish line, and I think they were trying to speed up the pace lap, and it has ended up a little bit backfiring, but nevertheless, yeah, we're through, we're in, we're about to get going.
Well, it's worth pointing out, of course, that with this 2.4 hours on the clock, the time has technically started ticking down, hasn't it? So it's not quite the full 2.4 hours of racing. So the onus is actually, this could come back to bite the pole man, Ben Borman, because obviously he wants to make it a quick formation lap to get him up to speed. But I mean, come the end of the race, if he's in a battle for victory and he's got the opportunity to have a little bit of a lackadaisical run to the line or to start another lap, what he's doing here could actually adversely affect how the battle goes down on the final lap. I don't want to jinx anything for him, but you know, in the long-term form of sports car racing, you've got to be thinking about strategy all the time. So he'll want to be up to speed and he'll want those tyres warm enough and the brakes warm enough to give him a decent car to stop in the apex at turn 1. But at the same time, you know, you've got to be thinking about the end of the race as well here. You don't want to be dilly-dallying, but at the same time, you also want to put yourself into a reasonably competitive position. Do not expect this start to be squeaky perfect, because obviously we have a time constraint issue to think about. 2.4 hours is ticking down, so you can expect that the cars will come around in their formation as close to the 2 grids as possible. They may just decide to go green with the cars relatively in order. Could end up being single file, although they will try and be as close to their rows as humanly possible, but the race has got to start. So the competitors will get themselves into their positions. They are getting towards the line, and the cars are starting to get towards their positions now. Borman is leaving it as late as possible. Kowalski is going to try and get up alongside potentially before the line, but there might not be a lot of time to do that. So Borman is going to come through and across the line, and that is a green, and we are away and racing in the Daytona 2.4 hours of 1991. It's the perfect start for Borman as he goes into turn 1. Wood to the Bruin is going to try not to kick the car out wide, and he's already starting to make a lunge on Jacob Kowalski as they head through onto the sports car section. Looking in the background, looks as though everybody's pretty much got it squeaky clean off the start. Stoll still fourth from Mikazo, and then Demoink, Declane, Keskinen, Eladrisi. Demoink has made his move on the inside line. Oh, and a bit of a run wide there. That's gone very badly wrong for Demoink, who has dropped back in 7th place. Declane and Mikazo both managed to get through, and I think Demoink is going to lose out to Keskinen on the far side as well. There goes Kari Keskinen in the Nissan and has managed to get through as well, so I think that's going to cost the position. Another big lunge on the inside from Baz Swattenball. Swattenball is going to try and come through on the inside of the right-hander, has not been able to make that stick. So, a very interesting start. A couple of drivers getting out a little bit wide. Roy de Moink is the one who really lost out, dropped down to about 8th position. Oh, we've lost the place on the inside line now, as through goes Prodan. So Prodan gets the move on Swattenball. This is already a pretty active start. Borman is already starting to disappear out into the distance ahead of Jacob Kowalski, as Roy de Moink has got a slipstream now on Miranda Eladrisi. Eladrisi is just going to have to let him go on the far side. And Roy de Moink is getting straight back on the bicycle, isn't he? Absolutely perfect. Oh, there's an off in front of him. So who's that's gone up? That's Ikazo. Ikazo's got it all wrong in the chicane, and that is going to drop Ikazo a long way back. And that's a loss of momentum on one of the fastest points of the circuit. Expect Ikazo in momentum to fall out of the top. Oh no, I was going to say he's going to fall out of the top 10. But he's caught right up behind Eladrisi and Keskinen, and he's using the draft to get back on tow with them. So this is excellent stuff as he follows in behind the Nissans, and he's going to try and run on the high side, try and get in and make another position. He's going to have to settle where he is. So the end of the lap 1, it's Borman, Kowalski, De Bruin, Stoll, Decline, De Moink, Eladrisi, Keskinen, Ikazo, Prodan, Swattenball, Smith, Guyan, and Ganari. Brilliant start as up on the grass, Donat Prodan tries to get his move on the inside. Now he makes it stick on the inside line, but he's not going to have any traction. Squirrels off on the braking, so goodness me. Nearly loses the car altogether, and somehow Donat Prodan sticks it on the inside of Baz Swattenball. Thanks very much, mate. I'll have the place.
What an absolutely frantic start. Another move down the inside. So obviously these infield sections, big overtaking opportunities. The draft we saw in qualifying and in warm-up obviously is very huge, and they're all nose to tail, nose to tail, nose to tail. So there are so many cars in a line, lots of dirty air, but also lots of air that's cars that are punching a hole in the air and making that straight line speed much better for the cars behind. We've had probably as clean of a start as we could have. I don't know that we had much of any incidents. That was a very clean start for everyone involved. Good job.
Well, there was a couple of mistakes from drivers, but certainly nothing that you could say is irate bad driving. Everybody was absolutely spot on the mark, really. The only major mistake, I think, on that one was pretty much from Luciano Riccardo, but he's managed to get back onto speed again quite quickly. Here's Donat Prodan, and we ride on board with Bas Zwartenbal as Bormann goes across the line on a 133.856. It's astonishing when you consider that Jacob Kowalski's just banked in a 135. So Bormann is up to speed and has got the balance he wants and is already able to pull out a 3.9 second advantage. This is Jason Whitehead, and there, alongside him and through goes, is that George Underleadis getting through, or is that the 14th car? No, that's Leone Gennari. So Leone Gennari in the JL Corsa Porsche, he gets through into 14th place. There's a yellow in sector 2 by the look of it. So someone's gone off the road and rejoined. So there's going to be a few people, particularly within the amateur class, that's going to struggle. A yellow in sector 1. So somebody's gone off there. A few cars behind us. We'll try and keep up to date with as many of the incidents as possible. But just riding on board with these guys is going to give us plenty of satisfaction, to be fair. This is the battle for the mid-pack. That's the Sever, Gant, Aiken, Carmen, Mountjoy little scrabble we've got at the moment. And that is Mountjoy that we're watching at the moment. So Tom Mountjoy in the Hardtail Racing Porsche was trying to get on terms with Steve Carman, who we saw spinning off in the warm-up session earlier on. Sauber driver trying to get himself back in a position. Now we ride on board on the banking. This is the battle for 9th position we're focusing in on now. And that is Zwartenbal in front of us. We're riding on board with John Uyan. Into the chicane. Bit of a twitch there from Ross Smith, but not bad from Zwartenbal. He picked up the pieces quite well there on the apex. Bormann goes through again, a 133.5 from him now. That's 2 seconds a lap quicker than anything Jacob Kowalski's been able to do until that last lap, when Kowalski comes up with a 134.6. Now here we go, up on the inside. This is the move potentially on. Make the move stick. The Peugeot is trying to stick it on the inside line. And is there going to be the overtaking move? They just can't quite get close enough here. The treble one of Uyan has just not been able to get through on the inside line. This is proper retro territory for John Uyan. As you well know, Troy, this is exactly the kind of car he loves to race in exactly the kind of environment he loves to race in. Old school.
Absolutely, and everybody here, I'm sure, is having a blast as they're trying to keep their car on the road. Like we said, no traction control for these guys in the Pro and the Purist. The Purist, of course, using the H-pattern shifters as well. So we're going to see the Purists and the Pros kind of mixing it up with each other, and that's sort of what we see here as well. So Roger Decline is in the thick of it for third here.
So Bormann leads the way. Kowalski second from De Bruyn, Stoll, De Moink, Eladrisi, Decline, Keskinen, Ikazi and Prodan is the top 10 at the moment. And if you're just tuning in, we are in the midst of the first phase of the race in the Champions Motorsport Virtual World Sports Car Championship 1991, powered by Stormgang Solutions. I'm Jake Sanson, he's Troy Uyan, and we are having an amazing run at Daytona for the 2.4 hours, and it's already pretty hectic in the first couple of laps of racing. 2 hours 14 on the clock, a long night ahead of us, and you can tell us all about the great Group C sports car memories in the chat boxes on YouTube. Tell us all your stories, enjoy the racing, sit back and have a wonderful night on us, reliving the glories of Group C. This is a nice opportunity now. I was up the inside, we might get an overtaking move. Big dive. Oh, so close for Keskinen. I tell you what, he really was leading on Declan there. There was so nearly contact between the two of them as they went through the left-hander, caught the brakes nicely. Unfortunately, therefore, his opponent, it was nice and easy for Keskinen to give Decline a little bit of a barge as he went through. No physical contact, I don't think. It was just leading on the apex, reminding him that he was there. And Kari Keskinen, as you can see from the inset, now 0.7 of a second ahead already. That just shows you how much advantage you can gain just by getting the move right, because then Rogier Decline has obviously had to spend a couple of moments there, Troy, just correcting the car back again. And you have to reprogram the rhythm of the car. And now the sister car, Marianne Eladrisi squeezed over the yellow line, and he commits to it as Roy de Moink is not giving him any room at all there. Now that's definitely something that they'll want to have a talk about later.
Not entirely sure you can stay on the apron, They will have chatted about it in the driver's briefing, which again we were not privy to. But I'm not entirely sure you can get away with that. But it will be reviewed, of course. But I mean, what a battle with these guys on the apron. Of course, now we go back the other way. You know, we're gonna have Porsche now having the draft.
Now, I thought the racetrack was the black bit with the lines either side of it, but clearly Marouane Ladrisi has designed his own racetrack there as he battles away, and now you can see in the draft, in the slipstream, round the outside, De Moink says, thank you very much, mate, that's how you get a clean overtaking move done. But Ladrisi is going to get exactly the same benefit the next time around, so this is what's brilliant about this Daytona circuit. As soon as you make the overtake, you've got a driver trying to fight you back for it straight away. Oh, there's an off in the background. Somebody went off there in a turn one. Didn't quite figure out who that was, but certainly a big off in the background as we now look at Luciano Icazo in the Esport AMG Sauber, the Argentine car. There was definitely an off in the background, and someone's going to be falling down the order. Didn't quite see who that was, unfortunately, but certainly a couple of incidents there for a few drivers, just trying to see if anybody from the top end of the field has gone down the field. Well, certainly there's a couple of cars that are not circulating anymore that were. Jacques Vermeulen and Santiago Dancourt in particular have not come through again at the end of the first couple of laps. Maxi Petravki has had a moment or two as well. I think he might have been out of the race as well. So already we've lost a few casualties from the first part of the race. There's Donat Prodan, but look at Ross Smith. Ross Smith has got the draft. He's just gaining, goes left. Careful! Goodness me! He almost took a chunk out of the car against the wall there, my goodness! Just darted out of the slipstream, and the car was going so fast in the wash that essentially he had to wrestle. Oh, and Donat Prodan has missed the chicane completely.
He overshot the braking, of course, trying to capitalize to get back at Ross on take advantage of the draft. But oh man, that's wow. So we do have the tire barriers in the chicane there, so we did have to avoid those as well. So that was almost very costly.
Well, Donat Prodan has definitely fallen out of the top 10 as a result of that, so he's going to have to make up some ground. But Ross Smith is the man who gets away with that one without too much of a headache, as now we watch Marouane Ladrisi and Roy de Moink, who are still battling over 5th position. Nothing much has changed between these two since the start. Having an amazing moment. Wolfmaster Gaming 227 says, who was that insane driver? It's a bit of a harsh analysis of the situation. I don't think I'd have done any better than that, to be fair. That was a bit of a moment there, of course, for Donat Prodan, who has dropped to 14th place as a result of that mistake. He's slotted in behind Jason Whitehead and ahead of Leone Ganari in the JL Corsa Ferrari, so he'll come back to it. Oh, good exit from Marouane Ladrisi, but he had so much wheel spin, he couldn't quite get back on the inside of Roy de Moink because he was still trying to correct his own car. And in front of them, we've got Wouter de Bruin, who has not really been able to capitalise on his 3rd position at the starting place of the grid. Here comes Ladrisi. Ladrisi in the Nissan. Watch as he goes right. Goes right, goes high side, tucks back in for more, slipstream, down the back straight. Will he make the killer move into the bus stop? That's the killer move. He's not close enough. You can't really commit to that. The risk of bidding it is far too high on that chicane. But look, you can still see drivers making mistakes, and that's a big mistake. As on the far side. Now, who is that that's dropped it? I think that was a back marker, actually. So, fortunately, I don't think that's anyone from the top group.
It was a back marker.
It was indeed a back marker. So Roy de Moink able to get away with that, and so too was Marouane Ladrisi. Now you're going to have problems with that all race long, as drivers will obviously be trying to fight against the back markers and try not to trip over them. But with 2 hours and 9 minutes still to go in the race, that could happen several times. Oh, big tag slapper from De Bruin. Did you see that? The tail got so trigger happy on the way out of turn 1. He was so lucky that the car didn't swap ends. It's so easy to lose these cars when you've got so much wheel spin. You've got to be very, very gentle on the throttle application as you come back off the tail of the main body of the apex. And now that's tightened them up. Look, you've got De Moink and Ladrisi both trying to make their moves on Wouter de Bruin. As they come through the hairpin, back on the power. It's very tough to know where. De Moink is not leaving Ladrisi a lot of room to maneuver, is he?
Not at all. I mean, they're fighting so hard, and they're just nose to tail. There's barely a car width between these guys, that whole inner sequence.
Love the slipstream that they get off the banking. Here we go, up through the gears, on the power. We're seeing who blinks first here. De Bruin, De Moink, or Ladrisi. De Moink is getting good slipstream off De Bruin. Will he make the move into the bus stop? It's big risk. It's a big gamble. You've got to flirt with the curbs as you go through. Keep it nice and balanced. Mistake from De Moink. Eladrisi had to respond, but doing so meant he lost a little bit of traction himself. Oh, it's so easy to get this wrong, isn't it? Just inches away from disaster. These cars have so much brute power, and the center of gravity is so changeable in the mid part of the apex that the car just wants to snap away. You are wrestling against it as much as you are your opponents. Into the braking zone for one. Oh, De Bruyn got that a little bit crossed up in the braking zone, but he managed to collect it without losing too much time. So De Moink and Eladrisi getting close. Eladrisi going for it. Here we go. On the inside, you can only go for one. You can't go for both. I think his eyes were a bit wider than his stomach on that occasion, but Eladrisi able to get an advantage there from De Moink, who just kicked up the grass on the way out of turn 3, and that was enough for momentum to shift back to Eladrisi. So the Nissan driver's up to 5th place. Now he's got an opportunity on De Bruyn. Side by side, leads on it. De Bruyn's going to have the inside line for the next hairpin. But no, Eladrisi's got the draft. He's got the opportunity. He gets better acceleration out of the right-hander. And as they go into the left, Eladrisi's got them both. Bye, boys. I'm off.
What a lap. I mean, between the two, and now we got De Bruyn and De Munich obviously fighting between themselves now for the rest of it. Eladrisi's gone at this point, 7/10 up the road, and he's going to get the inside for the bus stop.
So De Bruyn is now going to have to tuck back into De Moink. There's no real two ways about that. He has to slot back in. Wait for another opportunity to appear. Out of the bus stop! They're so loose on the way out of the bus stop as well. Both of them kicking up the grass. So now this is the chance for De Bruyn. Tucking up behind De Moink. Wait for it. In the draft. De Moink is keeping him guessing a little bit on the power. Do you go right or do you go left? The next turn is a left-hander. But he knows that De Moink will be protecting and covering that line a little bit. Don't make the overtaking move yet. It's too big a risk. Just keep the car nice and planted. Try to limit the wheel spin. You've got to be so patient on throttle application as well.
Speaking of limit, I think he was pegged there on top end, so he didn't actually have the momentum to swing into T1. I think he was absolutely on top end after that entire banking section in the draft. Nothing left in the gear.
Indeed. Now, we've got a penalty that's just been given out to Leone Gennari. So, Leone Gennari, the JL Corsa Porsche, running in 14th place. Leone Gennari has ended up with a penalty. Now, I'm not entirely sure what that's going to be for, but certainly for this man, Leone Gennari, he's come up on the R-Factor 2 servos having a penalty. Now, whether that's because he's flirted with track limits one too many times or not, very tough to tell, but certainly for Leone Gennari, he's there in front of George Angelidis and Paul Venter in the midfield battle, and he's got that man Prodan, the man who doesn't quite know how to turn left in the bus stop, or certainly didn't on that one lap we spotted him anyway. That's a bit unfair. Apologies, Donat. But manages to, he's still got himself back into the midst there as, Stoll has had a moment. So Stoll has lost out to Eladrisi. Eladrisi is up to 3rd place now. Brilliant drive this from the Nissan. So even Manuel Stoll can't hold off Eladrisi as we watch Manuel Stoll now going through. And yeah, look, Eladrisi's long gone. Manuel Stoll's going to have him on the slipstream again. Gets straight back through. That is a massive speed difference, isn't it?
That was insane. I almost want to... Maybe there was a little bit of contact and we have a gentleman's rule in place where we give the spot back because they're going at it now.
So now they are going to be wheel to wheel up into the breakers over the hairpin. Eladrisi dives in on the inside. Lovely move. And it's 3rd position for Marouane Eladrisi. Excellent for the Nissan driver. Spot on the money.
Legendary couple of laps for Eladrisi. Holy cow.
Well, where has he suddenly found this raw pace from? He must have been looking after his tyres very well in the first few laps, because now he's suddenly like a bolt out of the blue, and he really is trying to make hay while the sun shines. Stoll is now having some problems keeping back De Moink. So De Moink is right there in position. Stoll is actually struggling to maintain the pace in his Kowalski Sauber. The sister car is up in front. Look at the gap between Borman and Kowalski. We've been so busy keeping an eye on these guys. 15 seconds, roughly, is now the gap between Borman and Kowalski. That is absolutely astonishing. Don't quite believe the timing screen that's there on your screen. If you want to follow it very closely, you can on the live timing, cmsracing-com.liveracers.com. You can keep up to date with the live timing there. And here's Ben Borman going through the traffic. This is the problem he's going to face.
Such a busy track. We still have 35 cars still in this. Oh, okay. Little bit of a moment there for the. So we have obviously the problem here that the back markers are obviously struggling to keep the car, and it's such a powerhouse of a car to drive. And then they have the blue flag from R Factor telling them, "Hey, get out of the way. Ben Borman's honing down on you."
Absolutely. Well, the thing as well, we always seem to miss when we talk about drivers going through the traffic. One of the biggest issues that the driver has to face is they're obviously following behind another driver. They could be in a battle with someone else. If they miss their braking, it's so easy to follow in the draft behind them. Oh, and that's De Moink in third now. De Moink is in third, Eladrisi in fourth place from De Bruyn and Stoll. So this third place battle is absolutely monstrous. We've had 4 different drivers, I'm fairly sure, over the last 3 laps running in third place at some point. They haven't all quite led the lap over the line, but what an amazing performance. And as David Anderson says, it's a close battle, great battles everywhere. Absolutely amazing stuff. Eric Jacobs obviously putting out the call from earlier on. The CMS definitely suggested a gentleman's rule of giving back places, so maybe that is exactly what he picked up on earlier, Troy, between Eladrisi and Stoll. Maybe that's exactly what they did have to do. They had to give up the position again, Eladrisi, but he has fought himself back into fourth place. De Moink is now in third position, so there's definitely been a shuffle of the deck somewhere between the drivers in the top 4 places, and Stoll is actually falling into the clutches now of Luciano Icazo, as on the inside Eladrisi is going to go side by side with De Moink again, and this time for third position, and Eladrisi is through, but watch De Moink, he's going to go right on the high side. So if this was a NASCAR race, that spotter would be going high side, trying to keep him in position. And he is still to the right of him, but he manages to make the move. So De Moink holds on to third position for the moment. Eladrisi is going to come straight back at him. Imagine what it's going to be like in May when we get to the Le Mans 2.4. This is just going to be sensational. Not that it isn't already, but here at Daytona, the drivers are really starting to feel it. Now, obviously, you can see the light is fading as well. The lights are coming on as we go into the dusk. Now, it's only a 2.4-hour race, but it's simulated as if it was 24 hours. So they're going to feel a full day to night to day time circulation as they're in car and not changing drivers on the inside. Eladrisi, and they do bang doors this time. And this time Eladrisi gets through. Now, was that clean enough of a move to sustain third place? That's the key element there, because I don't think that was intentional at all from Eladrisi, but he's a racing driver. The gap was there, he went for it, and it was a legitimate overtaking gap. But at the same time, the argument's going to be, well, he hit me while making an overtake. So that's going to be an interesting one to debate, but I don't think there was anything wrong with it.
No, I think that was okay. Dominic obviously not happy, flashed the lights, but I think that's good hard racing. I mean, let's be honest, this is Daytona. Everyone's light on downforce. Mechanical grip is a luxury. I think that was a great move. That is hard, aggressive racing for the podium spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you wouldn't want them to go half-hearted at it, would you? So these guys are definitely standing on it and putting on an excellent display so far. David Anderson pointing out the purists really do have their hands full. Yeah, for those who are just joining or have been around for a while and wondering what the 3 classes are, well, you've got the purists, the pros, and the AMs. The AMs are the ones that have the most support because they're the least experienced drivers out there. They're just trying to get the feel of the Group C cars, but they do have a little bit of support from R-Factor traction control setting 1, so level 1. So it really is the mildest it could possibly be. But for the AM drivers, that just gives them a tiny little bit more support. Then you've got the pro drivers, which is as it states. These guys are obviously on the sim rigs, they're pushing it, there's no driving aids, they're pushing it to the absolute limit of what they can do, and they are living the sim racer's dream driving style. But the purists class, there are only 11 of them in the grid, but the purists, they've got it in stereo, because not only have they got full sim rig position and no driving aids, but they've also got the clutch pedal and the H-pattern gearbox to contend with. So these guys are really suckers for punishment and gluttons for hardship, because they are really stretching the limit of what a human could do for 2.4 hours in one go around Daytona. That's the thing. You get a lot of endurance races where they'll do 1 hour, 2 hour stints. These guys are going for 2.4 hours solid. That is a really, really difficult battle for them all. So David Anderson just asking on the scoring tower, the purists are in black, question mark? Yes, indeed they are. So you've got the purists in black, the pros in red, and in silver are the AM cars. So that gives you a bit of a measure of the classes. So Eladrisi is currently leading the pro category in third position overall, ahead of De Moink, and his closest opposition is Keskanen, who is down in 9th place. And the battles continue.
Sorry about that, Jake. We should point out as well that this battle for third that we were mentioning was actually for the lead of the pro class. So in class, that battle for third was the lead of pro. So very intense battle for the lead of that class.
Indeed it was, and it's only just going to continue, isn't it? Here's Whitehead making his bid on Svartenbol. So Whitehead is going to try and make his bid. He hasn't quite been able to make it stick that time. Svartenbol going a little bit deep in turn one, but not enough as we get to the nighttime phase of the race. It is dusk now at Daytona in the 2.4, the first round of the championship. Petravsky, who retired from the race, has given us an update. There was a huge crash on the last turn of the oval that ended with me embedded into the wall. I tried to break myself free and ended up on the outside of turn 6 and got told to leave the server. That's unfortunate. That's a real shame for Petravsky, but there's always going to be casualties. There's always going to be some flotsam and jetsam in a race like this when you've got so many cars out there on the course. You could just about make out the cars that are no longer circulating. Jacques Vermeulen is out, so too is Santiago Dancourt, Maxi Petravsky, who we've just heard from, Tom Aiken, Roger de Clean, one of the big names that's out of the race, who was up in the top 10 originally, and then Johan Tavares has just pulled off in the JL Corsa Porsche. So there are only 35 cars running. I say only, that's still the biggest sim racing grid I've ever had to commentate on. It's brilliant.
Only 35 to go. It's such a huge grid.
Oh dear. So, nighttime. Here we go. The night racing phase of the race is on, and you're watching George Angelidis in the Lucky Strike Mazda, running in 14th place, trying to chase down Donat Prodan as they go onto the back straight. Yellow in Sector 2. You're going to see this a few times over the course of the race as Prodan kicks out the back of the tail and somehow manages to hold it in full Tokyo Drift style through the bus stop. On board with George Angelidis. Let's listen. Slipstream. This is where you make the big decision. Do you go right? Do you go left? Where's Donat Prodan going to put him? Prodan's going to drift out wide. Angelidis is actually going to back off a little bit, then get a faster line out. So you go slow in, fast out of that corner. You can actually make a couple of car lengths. Donat Prodan is sliding around a little bit. It's looking a little bit lackadaisical from him in front. He's feeling the pressure.
And the car is not working with him as well. So yes, letting the car ahead, just kind of figure out what they're going to do, and you focus, give a little bit of a space, and you focus on your exit.
Well, this is the ultimate blend between the R Factor 2 Pro Simulator and the brilliant Infogrames Le Mans 24 Hours video game that you used to see in PlayStation 2. Because now you've got the fully simulated 2.4 hours of racing, which just simulates 24 hours of racing. So, very tricky stuff. A good battle for all of the competitors, but it's getting pretty hectic out there. Wolfmaster Gaming pointing out so many yellow flags. Well, once we get into the nighttime phase of the race, you're going to see a few drivers tripping up. Don't see anything major yet, although we switch now to go on board with one of the Mercedes cars, and you can see the difference in steering application, and
really
some drivers are finding it really tricky out there.
So this is what's going on in Sector 1 to answer that question. Some people are having a really hard time as the tires start to wear off. Potentially they're on softs, they're pushing that stint length. Cars are getting lighter, the tires are getting worse. And we've had some spins in Sector 1, and thankfully, some of them happened right in front of Ben Borman, and he was not affected, so thankfully got through this one.
Seawolf points out to us that Sivagnoni is actually a gamepad driver. So that just shows you the level of commitment he's putting in. He's on a gamepad.
Oh my goodness.
I have no words. Absolutely no words.
I don't know about that.
That guy needs a medal just for showing up with a gamepad. Fair play for him to be keeping it on the road the way he is. That's astonishing.
Yeah. For the 91 cars, I do not recommend.
No, I mean, I've almost gone completely cold turkey from my gamepad nowadays on my Xbox and PlayStation. Never mind doing it on R Factor 2. Fair play, take it bow. That's absolutely astonishing. As David Anderson points out, that takes talent. It really does. Hall and Miller battling away for 18th position. Now where's Miller going to make his move? Tries to time it right. Tucks up behind Hall. Hasn't quite got the acceleration off the turn to nip it up the inside, but will certainly have the slipstream on the banking to try and make it work. This is excellent stuff so far. Now, apparently, we've got a nice little battle going on for 22nd place. We've got Sivagnoni, Carmen, Lalonde, and Gant all having a sensational little scrap for position. with these 4 cars. Here we are, as recommended to us by Wolfmaster Gaming 227. Thank you very much. We've got Simeone, Carmen, Lalonde, Gant, and Sever all very much together. Let's not forget that the man at the front of this little gaggle, Simeone, has a gamepad in his hands. It doesn't matter how many times you say it, it doesn't quite seem real, does it? Amazing.
It just sounds like a joke when you say that. I mean, it's quite impressive. I mean, I guess Daytona at least, mercifully, has a very small amount of corners, but as we talked about, there's not really a rest, there's not really a straight. Even on the banking, you need to pay attention, you need to keep the car in check, you don't want to touch the apron, that's for sure.
Well, I struggle as it is playing a gamepad with Assetto Corsa Competizione on the Xbox, never mind R Factor 2 on the PC, that's incredible. Now, here we go, this battle really does heat up on the banking, trying to throw each other off the path as well as they come through. Carmen, Lalonde, and that's Gant in there as well. Brandon Gant trying to get himself stabbed up on the inside.
Yeah, I don't know if 2 wide's going to work. I definitely don't think 3 wide's going to work.
No, not in the slightest. Through to turn 1. Hold it nicely on the apex. Try not to let the acceleration of the car come through. And, well, that was a little bit frightening. Maxi Petravki writing on the stream that was almost going to be a carbon copy of my incident. Now, here's John Uyan. And Uyan, I have to say, is making a good bid here as he gets underneath De Bruin. Walter De Bruin, who's been losing ground consistently over the last hour, is now trying to get himself up to the inside line. Will that do? Very nice indeed. Textbook from John Uyan. And a little bit of a back-end kick-out from Walter De Bruin, but he manages to stop the car from travelling too far across the apex before he loses traction, but that is going to eat into the tyres. And we talked a bit about pit stops earlier on, but now we're going to have to start thinking about it seriously, Troy, because we're obviously an hour and 50 minutes to go in the race. The first pit stops are not going to be too far away, but there's going to be some drivers that will find that 2 pit stops are not going to be enough, especially with this tyre grading that we are getting in the early phase of the race.
They're going to have to up their compounds. If they're trying to push these on softs, if they're just sliding around, even if they're on mediums, hopefully they're not on hards and doing all this sliding, because that is a very, very rough time to go. We do have still almost 2 hours to go. We're about, 34, 35 minutes into the race. We're talking about a 50-minute to a 60-minute stint, somewhere in there. So yeah, we are going to have some pit strategy come into play. There's always the alternate strategy, which I will bring up just in case we start seeing people do it, which is to start with your splash, to start with your lower fuel count. It's not always the best strategy, but some people do play that game, or in the case of 3 stints, they even out the fuel load. So it's not full tank splash. All of the stints are partial tanks, just to reduce the amount. And Bruin's coming back on, John.
He is indeed. I was just going to say, he's been throwing it through the bus stop. He decides to go right, and he's still got top-end power. Takes it round the outside, but Uyan is still there. He can't quite shut the door effectively. Now he's got to be brave. He goes wide.
Brave on the outside. Brave on the outside.
Oh, he's not going to hold it. Oh, fair play, though. He gave it his best shot there, Walter De Bruin, but problem is he couldn't quite turn in where he wanted to because he's a sportsman. He didn't want to just ram Uyan off the road, and he wanted to give him plenty of space to play with, and he just had to back out of it.
And of course, John giving all the room on the outside, keeping nice and tidy on the inside as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what's great about VWSC. You've got drivers that are willing to be very sporting. They love their racing. They don't want to be shoving each other off the racetrack. This isn't Wreckfest. This is R Factor 2. And there's the battle a little further up. This is Keskinen trying to get his move on the inside of Ross Smith. So Keskinen goes onto the bank. You'll get amazing slipstream in the Nissan onto the back of the Nookie Monsters Peugeot. But the Peugeot's actually pulled out a little bit of a gap on Keskinen.
Not a great exit from Keskinen on the last corner.
No, indeed, there was a little bit too much travel on the right rear of the car, wasn't there? He couldn't quite get the purchase down. But Ross Smith...
Better through the bus stop, though, for him now. Look at him now.
Very much, yeah. He was able to stand on the gas. And now Ross Smith is basically very much within his sights. Now he can use the slipstream here. But look, Ross Smith is just driving away from him.
He's so trim on downforce, or Keskinen's got some aero damage, which will drop a few miles per hour, or kilometers per hour, off the top end, of course.
Yeah, that's going to be where Keskinen's losing his time, because normally in the slipstream you're able to gain a massive amount of time on the car in front. That's somebody going off just beside them. It's nobody in the top 6, so nothing to panic about as we go on board with Miller. So Miller in the Jaguar, watching Mountjoy in front of him. Always good to see these midfield battles as well. This is the Speed Details Jaguar of Stephen Miller. He is raining down on the parade of the hardtail Porsche of Tom Mountjoy. So as much as we like to see the front runners, we want to see the drivers in the midfield as well. We've got a 2.4-hour race. We may as well make good use of it and see everybody out there. Behind him, I'm fairly sure that is Jacob Kowalski coming up to lap them.
That actually may be.
Oh no, that's Stoll. My apologies. That is Stoll. That is Kowalski. So Kowalski, they're running in second place. So it's Manuel Stoll in the sister car that's in 5th position, coming up to lap them. Now this is going to be fascinating because you've got drivers coming through the traffic with Smith and Keskinen on Stoll's tail, but they've also got to try and pick their moment as to when they go through the traffic, and at night time it's going to be harder than ever to do that.
Into the bus stop, into the bus stop, yes.
Goodness me, Mountjoy really didn't.
Oh, two on the back!
Yeah, Mountjoy and Miller, they tangle with each other. That is absolutely predictable when you've got 2 or 3 cars battling with each other. Oh, there's a big off on the infield. I didn't quite make... Was that Carmen going off? Yes, it was. It was Carmen. So Steve Carmen in the Sauber Mercedes going off the road there as round the outside, Stoll stabs it past the Lucky Strike Mazda. Now that is going to be George Angelidis, I think he's lapping there. So fabulous performance so far. Oh no, wait, that is not. That's William Miller. So that's William Miller. He's just gone round the outside of there. My apologies. So Angelidis is still... Yeah, George is there with Icazo, isn't he? So he's battling away with Luciano Icazo as they lap one of the silver Sauber Mercedes at the back end of the field. So Angelidis, we pick him up as he runs in 13th behind Icazo. We go onto the main straight. And Luciano Icazo in the Sauber in 12th position is also behind Baz Swartenball. So Swartenball has been able to keep himself right up in that mix quite nicely, actually. Now we go back into that battle for the top 10. There is Whitehead, I believe that is, in the Nissan. So
we're having
good
this,
run so far.
Sorry, Jake, we're having this issue now, not issue, but it's part of the deal here with both multi-class and a gigantic grid where you have battles in the midfield at the lower end and 3 wide into the hairpin. But that's exactly the point. We have back marker battles, we have midfield battles, and we have up front battles. So this, currently what we're watching would be the battle for 4th in the 4th or 5th in the pro class, 10th overall. Battles all up and down the track, and it's not the longest track. There's a lot of straight line running, and we will start getting congested in the midfield here.
Well, we've had a couple more DNFs, unfortunately. We have lost Donat Prodan, who we saw earlier on battling away in the top 10, has unfortunately pulled it out of the race as well. That's unfortunate, and it looks as though we've also lost Mark Jones, Brandon Gant, and potentially as well Steve Carman, who we saw going off the road. So that is very disappointing indeed. Hopefully we're going to see at least half the field come home, but it is tricky. This is the battle between Simeoni and Lalonde. There is the very talented Gilles Lalonde in the Sauber Mercedes, still giving us plenty of excitement and tension out there. And this is the pro battle, of course, between Simeoni and Lalonde. Still yellow flag. Oh, now that is that's one of the Kowalskis. That's one of the Kowalski Saubers going off. That is Stoll. So Manuel Stoll going off, and there's big smoke coming out of the car as he goes off. But Stoll rejoins down in 9th behind Wouter de Bruin, I do believe. So that is a big moment for Manuel Stoll, and that's definitely a hammer blow to Kowalski's chances. Kowalski is still there himself in 2nd place, Jacob Kowalski, but for the team, they really wanted to have 2 cars up in the top 5, and that's a big hammer blow for Manuel Stoll. Manuel Stoll now rejoins in front of Jason Whitehead. And that is a big problem. I've been corrected. Simeoni is an AM driver and Lalonde is a pro. I do apologise. Still getting used to the classes myself. But that's a big mistake from Manuel Stoll going off the road, and he rejoins just about in the top 10. But certainly in the first few laps he had the measure of this car and this track, but it's slowly got away from him from time to time, and he hasn't quite been able to stay on top of it.
Of course, in the Purist class as well, right? So that H pattern, that clutch, it's constant.
Yeah,
also,
absolutely.
We want to be careful of engine fatigue. It's a legitimate thing, and these guys, especially in the Purists, need to be very careful on their engine. There's so much that they're dealing with, and which is why they're in their own class, to be fair. But it's so much fun to talk about the overall, because everybody's together. and that's the battles that we see on track. It's just beautiful. There's so many cars. We're obviously into the thick of it for the nighttime racing now. There is a restriction as well, so we did see some cars earlier not having their headlights on. Now they will have been forced to. Courtesy says you do it when it gets about dusk, but there's a reminder in case you forgot to or what have you. Everybody's now on headlights. We're in the pitch black. We're in the middle of the night.
Absolutely. Getting ready for the witching hour, or the graveyard shift of these endurance races, as they call it now. Mountjoy is on the back of Venter now, so Venter is the next target for Tom Mountjoy. Looked to me as though he got a little bit bad run out of turn 3. He appears to be travelling quite slowly. Has he got a problem? Because Miller is reeling him in very quickly. Now, you were talking about leaning on the car and being very careful about the mechanical side of it, because you can have mechanical problems. I just wonder, has Mountjoy got a little bit of one developing, because Miller is catching him quite quickly.
Exactly, and again, Mountjoy, one of the Purist drivers as well, did look pretty off the pace during that middle sector, right? Obviously in the straight line, you let the car do the work. Let's see how the mechanics are through the bus stop.
He's going very slow on the approach to the bus stop. Miller just making mincemeat of the gap. So obviously you're having to be very careful on that H-pattern gearbox and the clutch pedal. If you get a missed gear or two in the wrong place, that really can damage the transmission. So you've got to be very, very easy, very gentle. You've got to respect these cars, because they will break, they will bruise, and that can really hamper the progress of the drivers in the field. Ben Borman has increased his gap to what, according to my timing screen, is 38 seconds. It says on the digital timer there, that on the left of your screen, that it's 58 seconds. I'd say it's closer to 52, although actually it is now starting to update, so it is getting towards the 58 mark. So he is very nearly a minute ahead of Jacob Kowalski. That is absolutely phenomenal, just how the pace has gone to him. Marwan El Idrisi is leading the pro race in 3rd position ahead of Roy de Moink, and then we have Ross Smith ahead of Keskinen. John Uyon is in 7th place now in front of Wood de Bruin, and then Stoll Whitehead in the 10th position spot. And it's very, very tricky out there for Stoll, because Whitehead really seems to have found his feet now in the nighttime stages of the race. He's been a bit quiet in the opening stint, but now that a few of the stragglers have disappeared, he's getting himself back into the mix. The leading AM, by the way, is Gennady. So the leading amateur driver is Leonie Gennady in front of Moynet, and then Guy Sever runs in 3rd position in the AM category. So plenty still to do, lots of great racing still to come, plenty of drama on the way. Whitehead getting very close in behind the back marker. That should help in his bid to close up on Stoll. The gap between them is 1.5 seconds, but watch out, because he's got a back marker of his own coming on behind to deal with him as well.
And we're also seeing the pit rotation start here. A few early stops have begun from a few of the midfield drivers.
Okay, so that's quite important to pick up for. So obviously we've been told that it's around 20 laps for the C11. The first driver to pit apparently was Sibon Yodi. He must have taken a little bit of damage, we're told. But Seawolf tells us it's around 20 laps for the C11 on fuel. So that could be very interesting. It's up the inside. This is De Moink going wheel to wheel with Ross Smith. De Moink has to back out of it in the end. Ross Smith is able to get the car up into 4th position. Now, looking at where Ross Smith qualified compared to where he's been able to drive that car back through the field, that just shows you, doesn't it? Qualifying is not the be-all and end-all. You've got to look after these cars. You've got to go consistent for the entirety of an endurance race, and it's no wonder that the Nuki Monsters have got 2 brilliant drivers up there in the top 5. Ross Smith may not have had the raw 1-lap pace in qualifying, but he's certainly had the consistency throughout the race to put himself further forward, as has this man, Marwan El Idrisi. And Marwan El Idrisi is actually now challenging Kowalski. He's leading the pro race in 3rd overall, but he's challenging Kowalski. He wants to win this outright.
He's still going forward. You know, first in pro is not enough. We've gone through Keskinen, De Moink, Smith, and then El Idrisi is looking at Kowalski as well to add to the list.
Well, Kowalski runs a little bit deep in turn 1. He might get a chance here, El Idrisi. He commits to it. Going to be side by side. Kowalski won't give him anything. Stands on the power on the apex. Careful, the back end could come around, but Kowalski, I think he's struggling for tyre life. El Idrisi gets through. So El Idrisi into 2nd place. I think he's having problems with tyres there, Kowalski. He hasn't quite got the grip, and El Idrisi has just been able to storm by in the Nissan.
Such an impressive run from Eladrasi and a beautiful up and under, as they were obviously neither of them on the ideal racing line, but make the most of it with a tight exit, quicker on the power, up and under, beautifully done.
Love this balance of performance that this BWSC 1991 mod has got. You can see so many drivers in so many different cars getting so many chances to run up at the sharp end of the field. We've had competitive racers in Jaguars, in Mazdas, in Saubers, in Porsches, in Nissans and Peugeots. It's absolutely as it was designed to be. It's excellent stuff. Here's Walter de Bruin trying to come around the outside of Manuel Stroll. Manuel Stoll has no grip to deal with it on the inside line. So Manuel Stoll has to let Walter de Bruin go through, and Jason Whitehead is next in line with Swattenball not far away. I think the Kowalskis are really struggling for tyres. They might want to change their strategy on the fly.
Always an option, of course, because once you get into the racing conditions, it's more stressful. There's more stress on you and the tires and the car than you've done in practice. It's hard to do. You can do the simulated race runs, but once you're fighting, you're sliding a lot more, right? So the tire degradation will be much quicker in the race.
The thing is, you're kind of having to learn by doing, aren't you? You're learning on the job, and that's the difficulty. So the strategies and the tactics that the teams might have thought would work out, suddenly finding it's a bit of a backfire situation, as there is Keskinen trying to line up Roy de Moink.
And we're seeing all these examples, right, going wide at turn one, wide in the bus stop, down on the inside goes Keskinen. De Moink trying to hold it around the outside, can't quite. Keskinen, beautiful move, leaves room on the outside and continues down to the kink. But they're having these problems, right? De Moink, it started with that turn one, going a little bit wide. The consistency over the course, but also the mechanical, the tire grip. It all factors in, and we're going to see this now for the rest of the race. We still have 90 minutes to go.
Indeed we do. Expect a few drivers to make mistakes that they wouldn't have done in the first 5 laps, because the car is going to surprise them at a rather nasty moment when they're in the middle of the braking point for the apex, and they're trying to let the car come back to the natural progression with mechanical grip. And the car just gives you a nasty little surprise. It kicks you in the backside as you get back on the throttle, and you have to try and make sure that the tail doesn't come around and overtake the front end. Santiago keeping an eye on things after his early stint. Sever running good and still has his head on, which is good to see. You know, these drivers are still finding a little bit more pace in the car. It looks like we may have lost Graham Duncombe as well. Unfortunately, he may be out of the race. Steve Carman is apparently still circulating. He's in front of Eugene Mazur, Oscar Dancourt, and William Miller, who has fallen away to the back of the field, unfortunately, over time. But I think now we may have an issue for Graham Duncombe. So we'll try and keep an eye on that one as much as possible. But it's Ben Borman who leads the way from Marouane Eladrasi, who leads the pro category. Then Jacob Kowalski, Ross Smith, Kari Keskinen, Roy de Moink, John Ouyan, Manuel Stoll, Walter de Bruin, and Jason Whitehead. That's your top 10 at the moment. The leading competitor in the AM category is currently now Moynier, who is leading. Then Guy Sever and Paul Venter, with Gennari, I think, has had a pit stop, which has put Gennari down into 4th position in class. Let's ride on board. Start to hear that excess wheel spin off the tyres. The grip is decimated. It's not quite as fluid as it was.
Nice glow from the track lights as we circumnavigate this. We got the track lights, the car lights, and it sometimes still never seems like the track's lit enough, but of course everyone knows, you know, the layout, they know their cars, and it's always, again, the difference between practice and the race. Circumnavigate that track while you're staring at the back of a giant front wing in front of you.
Just observe the difference in slipstream compared to what we saw earlier on. When the tyres were fresh, when they had plenty of grip, you would have cars just taking each other back and taking each other back, able to run in the draft. Now that the tyres are worn down, the fuel's depleted, the car is lighter, but the tyres have nowhere near as much grip. So you're actually losing out when you should be gaining natural progression in the slipstream, because the car just doesn't want to bite into the tarmac the same way it did before.
These exits, of course, it's the exit of one corner, but it's the beginning of the straight, and it's so important.
Pit stops, here we go, pit stops. Kowalski and Keskinen are both in pit road now, so Kowalski and Keskinen, now these are the big stops. Stoll is in pit road as well, I notice. So Stoll is in pit road. Now this is quite significant. The 2 Kowalski cars coming in together. Oh, and that's one of the Lucky Strike Mazdas. That's Miller. That's Miller who's gone in to the barriers. Wow, that's unfortunate for Miller. He's just dropped it in sector 2. And that's on the approach to the back straight, isn't it? He's just overshot on the brakes. Hasn't really been able to catch the car back again, unfortunately. Meanwhile, we've got Simeoni versus Lalonde. So Lalonde is now trying to go high side on Simeoni. Well, that was easier than he thought it was going to be. But Simeoni isn't done yet. He tucks in behind. Oh, you can see just how much of a wobble and a play there is in the draft. Look, this is Simeoni with the gamepad, don't forget. So it's harder to be as smooth on the steering wheel as humanly possible for Simeoni. You can see so much more twitchiness on the front end. Oh, and that's a straight on for Lalonde.
He's
Lalonde has overshot. He missed the apex completely.
Locked up into the braking.
And conversely, Simeoni, I'm told, has just been given a penalty. Now, I'm not entirely sure what that's for. Iladrisi pits. Iladrisi pits from P2. Now, he's the leader in Pro. So this is an important one. We need to see where he gets out in relation to Kowalski. So Jacob Kowalski rejoined in 15th place, just ahead of Kari Keskinen. And that is, of course, teammates to Marouane Iladrisi. So there is Kowalski on track. Now, obviously, these pit stops take a heck of a long time. But it's going to be quite important for where Marouane Iladrisi gets out on track by comparison to Kowalski. There's not going to be much between them when they get back out on the road, of course. And they're long pit stops because they're not just having to do tyres, they're also having to do fuel as well. And they do not change tyres at the same time as the fuel. They do the tyres first, then they top up with the fuel, but they don't do the same two jobs simultaneously. So they are long trips in the pits, Troy, and this is an important lap for Kowalski on fresh tyres. He's got to make a qualifying lap, basically, to gain track position back from Iladrisi.
And he's got so much traffic, potentially, you know, a boon if you get the draft on them. Potentially a hindrance, but I think position-wise, he's in a good spot here, so we'll see as the other cars come out of the pits, where do we all stack up?
Let's have a look back to the pits. Iladrisi is going to be there coming out onto the circuit, and I think he's going to get away with this in second position. He's made a good pit stop there. The Nissan team should get him out with plenty of time. Look at that. Absolutely gold dust from Marouane Iladrisi, and that just shows you how much time the Kowalski Sauber Mercedes cars dropped in terms of raw tyre life in the latter stage of their stint, because they hemorrhaged time in their last couple of laps. As up the inside now, Kowalski is trying to get back on terms with Zwartenbal, whilst also trying to shake off Brian Hall. He goes right, and that's enough to hang it out there with Zwartenbal. So Kowalski lives to fight another day. Now, Wouter de Bruin is coming to the pits, as has Jason Whitehead. So de Bruin is in the pits. There is Jason Whitehead, now stopped in his box. So they are in from 4th and 5th positions. There is Giesen. So Giesen with the Martini-inspired colour scheme on his machine. So Giesen is still doing a good job there in 18th place, Yuri Giesen. As into the pits comes George Angelidis in the Lucky Strike Mazda. So good stuff so far from the Greek racer. As there comes the move on the inside from Chen. Chen is trying to put pressure on Kowalski. There's been a good recovery drive from Jerry Chen in the Porsche, actually. He's been having a quiet race, but he's definitely got himself back into a competitive position. He's got a good chance here of getting into the top 10. Now, the man who really has been on the move, though, and it's worth pointing this out, as Kabizel has pointed out on the stream, is Ahmed Abdallah. He started 41st on the grid in this race, and he is currently in 15th position. He has run as high as 12th at one stage. Now, talk about comebacks. That's absolutely monstrous as Jerry Chen makes his way to pit road. And Ross Smith is in the pits as well for 2nd position. So Ross Smith is in the pits as George Angelidis leaves it. Now, where is Angelidis going to get out in relation to Icazo? That's actually quite an important one for the main strategy of this race. There is Icazo. There's Icazo. You just saw him in the right-hand side of your screen. Icazo's going to have a little bit more straight-line speed coming off the turn. George Angelidis has got traffic in front of him, but he has beaten out Luciano Icazo. That's an important one for Angelidis. Yellow in Sector 1 once again. As we ride on board with Luciano Icazo. Oh, careful! You don't want to run the ribbon there.
Lots of dirty air. Lots of dirty air through that kink. That was almost disaster.
Absolutely. Once you get it just the tiniest bit wide, you're talking a couple of inches offline there, and that's enough to spit the car off, and that's a bit... Oh, Venter has got a penalty, I'm told. So Venter has got a bit of a problem coming his way, as he's going to have to make his way to the pits. And we are now looking at Venter, who's battling away. I think that is still Steve Carman on the road just behind him, although Venter is a lap ahead of him in difference. Miller is the next one on the road to... Oh, that might be why he's getting a penalty. He's taken a little bit more than the racing line there. That was a bit of an overshoot on the far side. But I think he's got a... I think he's hit something, Venter, because he seems to be listing. Look, when he comes off the turn, you can see it. He's wrestling that car. It's kind of got a yaw to the right-hand side. He's wrestling with it.
I'm going to venture a guess that he clipped the inside wall at turn 1. Left side, left front, hit the inside wall coming into turn 1, because that's where the yellow was.
Yeah, that's a good possibility. Well, Iladrisi has now slotted himself back in front of Kowalski. The gap between them is 10 seconds. And that's not just the pit stop that's done that. That's the decimation of the tyre life of the Kowalski Saubers. So Iladrisi is in net second position, because, of course, you've got to remember that Ross Smith, in the second of the Nookie Monsters cars, or the Noon Racing car, I suppose I should say, for Ross Smith, his car's got to make a pit stop, and he is a lap behind Ben Borman, who has yet to pit. I don't think Borman's made his first pit stop yet, has he?
No, he has not. So we have
he's not.
Very few have not pitted yet. One who has and has made up ground is John and Jason have both netted in the pit. So the question is, did they take tires?
Well, no, hang on a second. You've made a good point there, because they all pitted, and Ross Smith is in second place, having pitted. So
exactly,
Smith
yes.
has actually jumped. He's jumped Iladrisi and Kowalski.
These guys they must be on hards. They're pushing the tires for a second stint. So that's why they were conservative. The lap times were slower, but they also don't have an extra 20 seconds in the pits. So does that 20 seconds, can you make that up if you take tires? These guys have said, I will be more consistent. I will have a faster net time at the end. If I keep the hard tires, I keep them in check, I don't burn them up, and I don't take tires.
I love this sport. It really is a proper game of chess at 200 miles an hour. These guys are having to think on the fly, figure out what the tyres are going to do, what they are doing at the moment, and how much time you can lose over the long haul of the race. Now, obviously, Marwan Iladrisi is going to have fresher tyres than Ross Smith, so he's going to catch him. But by pushing the tyres a little bit to try and gain the ground, he's also going to wear them slightly harder. So Ross Smith is actually playing the long game here, but it's working out for him. There's Manuel Stoll. Now, he's in 13th position, and that's with everybody except the leader, Ben Borman, having stopped. So that's how much time Stoll has lost over the course of the first hour of racing. Angelidis is up to 11th. Luciano Icazo is staying fairly consistent at 12th. And Manuel Stoll has to console himself with the fact that he has dropped to 13th position. It's not quite gone his way in the first hour. He's got time to get it back again, but they need to rethink on strategy if they want to get him up the sharp end. Big movers in the top 10, massive movers in the top 10. You've got Ross Smith in second place, Marwan Iladrisi is in third from Jacob Kowalski, John Uyan is in fifth position in front of Jason Whitehead, then Baz Zwartenbol, Kari Keskinen. In ninth position is Ahmed Abdallah. Oh, that's gone badly wrong.
Kowalski.
That's Uyan and Kowalski. They've tangled with each other. So Kowalski and Uyan, battling for fourth position, have tangled, and the rear wing is gone for Jacob Kowalski. There goes his chances of victory. Uyan trying to spin the car, and they hit each other again. Wow, what a disappointment. Kowalski will not win the Daytona 2.4. And rather sadly, it seems well, John Uyan. I wish we could see that one again, but unfortunately, the replay machine, we're going to have to work on that one, but certainly... Look at that for Kowalski. It was a big impact, wasn't it? You can tell, because there's absolutely no straight line ability to hold it in one place. As this is disappointing for John Uyan.
It's toast.
That car is dead. It's done for the day, isn't it? He knows it.
He's retired.
The CMS Pro Peugeot does not go any further, and that's unfortunate for John Uyan, because he was up in P5. He had worked it very well. I tell you one man, this is making grin from ear to ear, right, is Ahmed Abdallah. Ahmed Abdallah started 41st, and he is now in 7th position. That is absolutely extraordinary. There he is, and Ahmed Abdallah, who started dead last in this race, is now in P7, just by keeping it on the island. Right, now here is Ben Borman in the pits. He has left it later than anybody else, but Ben Borman finally comes into the pits.
2 minute gap over Ross.
2 minute gap over Ross, but how long did he leave it? As Seawolf pointed out, how has Borman not pitted yet? What car is he driving? Well, he's in a Peugeot, but he kind of modified it that much.
That's an impressive stint, because that's an hour straight.
Yeah,
another straight hour, and then just a splash for 20 minutes, 22 minutes at the end. So, I mean, that is quite impressive. And obviously, he has free choice of tires. If he was planning on mediums, if he was planning on hards, doesn't matter. Go down an option, because you have such a big gap. You could even afford to have a more comfortable, grippier tire, even if you weren't planning on taking them in the first place.
So we have lost another couple of drivers. We've lost Roy de Moink. I didn't see when that happened, but Roy de Moink has retired from the race. Now, he was battling for the top 5 at one stage, wasn't he? So unfortunate for Roy de Moink, as he is the latest to join the retirements list, and what a list it is. You've got John Oyan, who has just retired, and then you've got Roy de Moink, Graham Duncan, Brandon Gant, Mark Jones, Donat Prodan, Johan Taveras, Rogier de Klein, Tom Aiken, Maxi Petravki, Santiago Dancourt, and Jacques Vermeulen, all out of the race after what has been a very tough first race of the season. It's not going to be too long before the dawn starts to break over Daytona. Of course, it is a 2.4-hour race, the longest race of the season, tied with the Le Mans 2.4. So it simulates a 24-hour rotation, but it's not going to be too long before the dawn breaks over Daytona, and then we're going to have the run to the checkered flag. But certainly for Ben Borman, who is just about a minute ahead of his own teammate, Ross Smith, they have managed to get themselves into a perfect position up front. El Adrisi leads the pro category now in front of Jason Whitehead. He's done a great job of being consistent there in P4. Zwartenbal is in P5 from Keskinen. Abdallah in 7th place, despite starting dead last. And then 8th place for Wouter de Bruin, who is still keeping it on the island. Ikazo is in 9th place, and Stahl is in 10th. Let's ride on board with Zwartenbal on the Porsche. On the power, that's really smooth, to be fair. You can see that there's one of the Kowalski cars really struggling to get back into contention. I think that's Jacob Kowalski trying to get himself back into a competitive position, you know. As Manuel Stoll is locked in combat with Luciano Ikazo. So the Zwartenbal is just trying to take it nice and patiently. He can use Kowalski in front of him. Now in Sector 1, another little trip off into the Turn 1 grass by the look of things. And there is Keskinen getting closer, closer, closer. Oh, that is Abdallah, I do believe. Oh no, sorry, that's Sibignoni. That's Sibignoni. So the gamepad driver. Look at the squirrel of the front end of that car. You can see how twitchy it is. But Sibignoni having a moment. Unfortunately, that was at the wrong time. The kiddie system was asking for progress. Look at the onboard from Sibignoni. This is what it's like driving with a gamepad. I
mean, you're not gonna go 2.4 hours with that kind of steering input and not have a moment, right?
No, absolutely not. Goodness me, look at it.
Yeah, that's
brave.
It's its own kind of thing, isn't it?
You know what? That's brave squared. Never mind brave. Oh dear. Well, fair play to Matthew Sibignoni. I mean, that guy needs a medal for bravery from the George Cross, but that's just absolutely awesome. Here comes Keskinen, getting closer and closer to Zwartenbal. And
this
not
is the
far
battle.
away. Yeah, not far away is Abdallah. He's actually only about 1.7 back.
And this is the battle that won't go away, right? Between Whitehead, Zwartenbal, Keskinen, and Ahmed coming in to join the party as well. It's been here the whole race. We can always switch back to this battle, and there's always something going on.
Absolutely. Whitehead really starting to get his knuckle down now and pull out a bit of a gap. Zwartenbal is the one in trouble because he's got Keskinen breathing down his neck, and Ahmed Abdallah is not far away. Wouter de Bruin is about 10 seconds back from all this. Then Luciano Ikazo and Manuel Stoll doing a fabulous stuff in position there as well. Side by side, that is Keskinen letting the race leaders go. That is Borman getting through and lapping the back markers. I can't believe we're talking about back markers in 5th and 6th position already. That just shows you that's how strong the Nookie Monster Peugeot is. But here comes Keskinen round the right side. That's where Zwartenbol's placed him. And look at Abdallah. He's gaining ground on both of them. He's going to sweep past them both. He goes right side. He's still got speed, and he's got him. He's got them both. Well done to Ahmed Abdallah. That was amazing.
What kind of downforce trim does he have? That was insane.
Do you know what? From 41st to 5th, they say that Herbie the Lovebug's movies were unrealistic. You can go from the back to the front. That's amazing from Ahmed Abdallah. Terrific stuff. And the Sauber Mercedes driver doing a sensational job at the moment. And there comes Keskinen side by side with Zwartenbol. Is he going to get his chance? They're both about as even as each other in terms of raw acceleration. They bang doors. And again! No! That was inevitable.
2 into the kink. That's a fine recovery, though. They can actually continue on. That was a fine recovery.
I thought that was going to be both cars into the wall, crunch, good night, see you later. But both of them have recovered from that spectacularly.
And you know what? Just back to it. You know, why not? Just back to it.
Yeah, don't worry. As you were. Nobody saw that. That never happened. We're going straight back into it. I love this sport so much. Virtual World Sports Car Championship 1991 continues in the Daytona 2.4. And there is still some absolutely epic racing. There is Ahmed Abdallah, who is now in 4th place. He's got Jason Whitehead. Go, Ahmed. This is an amazing comeback as he runs now in 4th position. And he is 30 seconds back from Marwan El Idrisi. He started dead last, did Ahmed Abdallah, and now he is 3rd position in the Purist class, running in 4th position overall. This is mega. And now look, is that Borman in front of him? He's closing up on him to unlap himself, isn't he? I think he is.
I think he is. He's matching pace with the leader, and that's why he's going to come through this field, not just from 41st, but the top 10 have had we'll say relatively, with a big asterisk, a relatively clean race. And
I have a feeling that if Ahmed Abdallah does catch and pass Ben Borman, he'll be the only driver in this entire race who's made an overtake on Ben Borman at any point.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Ben Borman is just going for it, of course, and he's just always got the pace. But that goes to show the pace that Ahmed has and why he's been able to take chunks and chunks and chunks out of the timing of our top 5, top 6.
Been terrific from Ben Borman, but Ahmed Abdallah really has got used to this car now and really started to stand on it, and he's picked up the pace. I mean, his consistency has been absolutely magic at the moment. So we're continuing on over the course of the race, 2.4 hours, and Ben Borman still just knocking them off like raisins each time. Oh, that was a big difference in the stopping distances between the two cars there. Borman had to react very delicately to that one. Is that Mountjoy in front of him? I think it might be Tom Mountjoy in the hardtail Porsche. Borman reacts to it well and gets through on the far side. Ahmed Abdallah has not had to stand on the brakes quite so heavily, so he's not far away from... There he is!
Unbelievable. He's got a better run through traffic.
Do you know what? This is like something out of Thunderbirds. He's just charging his way through the pack, and now he is on the tail of Ben Borman. This can actually cause a bit of an irritation for Ben Borman. The last thing he needs right now is a distraction as one tries to upstage Ahmed Abdallah's incredible run through turn 1. 2 cars going a little bit wide there. But Ahmed Abdallah is having an incredible, phenomenal run this. This is terrific to watch him charge his way back up the order. And he is in 4th position, having started last. And that is 41st and last. Awesome.
It's kind of unbelievable. Again, on that H pattern, so he's been keeping it clean, consistent on the H pattern, manual clutch, keeping the throttle revs in check, engine revs, rather, sorry. And again, we have our battle for 2nd in Pro yet to go away. As I said, we can always jump back to it.
Yep.
Zwartenthal and Whitehead now going on to the back straight onto the banking.
Just keeps rumbling on and on, doesn't it?
It will never end. I feel like we're going to be talking about these guys the rest of the race, and to be honest, I'm okay with that because it's been extremely entertaining.
Well, the way things are going, they're probably still going to be battling with each other by the time we get to MAK Corp. Never mind at the end of this race. They're absolutely glued at the hip. This is terrific racing. So we have got an hour and 13 to go. We've just gone past the halfway point pretty much in this race. As up the inside, that's Ganari trying to fight his way back into the class lead in the AM category. And he has done that. 13th position currently for Leone Ganari, who is the lead driver in the AM category.
And traffic had a factor there. Miller did not have a good time with traffic. Gennari did.
That's a good point. And Gennari, I have to say, has been able to pick up the pieces quite consistently over his opposition, which is why he's been able to get himself back into position. And he pitted early, actually, which is why he dropped a little bit further back down the order. But he's been able to take it relatively smoothly since then, so he's not really put himself into harm's way too many times. We're on board with Luciano Micazzo, trying to close up on Wouter de Bruin. Onto the brakes and the hairpin. Just a tiny bit eager on throttle application. Nothing to panic about, though.
You saw the counter steer was early. Like they're already anticipating. They know now. They've been at this for, an hour straight, an hour 10 straight. So the counter steer came before the slide did in that regard almost.
Certainly did. It was instinctive. He knew exactly what was coming before it even started. There were 29 cars still left in this race, which means we've had 12 retirements. John Uyan, Roy de Moink, Graham Duncan, Brandon Gant, Mark Jones, Donat Prodan, Johan Taveras, Roger de Kleen, Tom Aiken, Max Petravki, Santiago Dancourt and Jacques Vermeulen. These are the retirements. 41 started, only 29 still circulating. And the leader, Ben Borman, is currently on lap 44 of this race. As up the inside, that's Sibignoni making his bid. Oh no, sorry, we're on board with Carmen. So Carmen getting his move on Sibignoni. So Carmen makes the overtaking move into 22nd place. So Steve Carmen in the similar Sauber Mercedes, although his is a much more turquoisey blue, or duck egg blue if you like, depending on which Dulux paint chart you're looking at. Carmen gets his way into 22nd place there as he gets past Sibignoni. Very solid race.
Duck egg blue? Duck egg blue?
Oh yeah, so, yeah. Have you never been down to B&Q and looked at the duck egg blue paint? Oh, it's amazing. That's the one thing you got to do when you come to the UK. Check out the duck egg blue paint jobs in B&Q. All the English people know exactly what I'm talking about. Everybody else literally thinks I started speaking Chinese then, but don't worry about it. It's all good. It's all fine. Carmen battling away with Sibignoni, and Carmen getting into 22nd position there as he just battled away with Guy Sévère. Now, Guy Sévère has actually lost the position, so Sévère down to 22nd as Carmen got into 22nd, but briefly, because Guy Sévère has managed to get the place back again. So some good battling away there as they continue on in the draft. There's Luciano Micazzo, 7/10 of a second behind Wouter de Bruin. And I have to say, one of the things I love about this particular sport is you get to see the original ideas of liveries in the Group C. And I never thought I'd say this because I never thought it would ever come up. But I tell you what, a red Sauber Mercedes really does look beautiful, doesn't it?
You get the freedom, right? You get the freedom to mess with classics, to put your own spin on it. That's a move up the inside. Good avoidance there by Carmen. That was beautiful avoidance.
And that was very opportunistic from Guy Sévère. Guy Sévère doing a really good job to make his way up on the inside line there. Carmen is going to come straight back at him. But the beautiful purple silk cut Jaguar of Guy Sévère really starting to showcase his speed and his skill there. So truly extravagant stuff, and good to see how the battles continue for the drivers out there. Now this is Hall in the 44 car, just trying to get on terms with Jacob Kowalski. Remember the days when Kowalski was battling for the victory? His little incident, unfortunately, with John Uyan has really put paid to that one.
And Kowalski actually, I think, has just gotten by Hall, and he's basically beginning his what would be his recovery drive, right? But again, if anyone has had damage in R Factor 2 and then taken to the pit lane, the car never feels the same. It doesn't matter that your little HUD display says, oh, it's all green. It's not all green. He'll be fighting this for the rest of the race.
Yeah, well, we've had an update from John Uyan. Unfortunately, he couldn't avoid the spinning Sauber in front. He had a broken suspension. So, in fact, that sounds like it wasn't John Uyan that was the instigator of the crash. He was actually the innocent victim. He got collected by a spinning Jacob Kowalski. So that's unfortunate that it looked like Kowalski was the one, seemingly by what we hear from that, is that Kowalski basically dropped it, made the mistake, had a spin. There was nothing that poor John Uyan could do to get out of the way, and he was up in 5th position at that point. So Uyan could easily be fighting for the podium the way things have currently turned out.
And again, right, on a different strategy as well. So how does that play out over the course of the next hour? We'll never know.
Yeah, that's it. It's wishes were horses, isn't it? He's going to have to come back at Sebring and hope that the strategy will play into his hands in the 1.2. Now, Borman leads the way from his teammate Smith. They are running in first and second. They certainly weren't running first and second after qualifying, but the team tactics have been working very, very well indeed. As we ride on board with Zwartenbal, battling away with Whitehead. This is the battle for 5th position, and it's still going strong.
It's just comfort food. We just come back here or whatever.
Oh, it's like a good old Taco Bell, isn't it? Brilliant stuff. Right, back on the power again. To the braking zone, through to the kink. Ride the curb. Trying not to get too far right. That's well planted by Zwartenbal. Whitehead getting a little bit leery. Back on the power. And up towards the hairpin. This is where you really can make a massive mistake. You've got to be so careful when you're getting on the acceleration here, because you kind of kiss the curb, then drift out to the right-hand side to get the best purchase off for the banking, then hit the throttle while you're still turning. So the car just wants to go sideways, wants to just continue spinning left and then spit you out into the wall. It's a very easy mistake to make. I've driven a few laps of the Daytona 24-hour sports car circuit on iRacing in cars similar to this, not quite the same as this, but you really do get the sense of what the high-powered prototype sports car wants to do when you get loose, and it really does punish you if you're not prepared for it. Stoll and De Bruyn battling away in 8th position and 9th position at the moment. Luciano Riccardo is about a second up the road from these guys. But look, at the start of the race, we had slipstreaming. We had the Indy 500 going on at the first 20 minutes of the race, and now it's all tactical. It's all about how they've looked after tyres. It's all about how they've managed the aerodynamic grip and the mechanical grip of their cars in the middle phase. So this is all about just standing on it now. You've just got to try and hold on to the car before it snaps you off.
I was going to say, sorry to cut you off there, the De Bruyn is continually pegged on the back straight as well, has not stretched the highest gear out enough, so that's why he is also losing out here in these laps, because he started that last lap coming off of the final hairpin to begin the run to the bus stop. He started that right behind Picasso and didn't end up that way at the beginning of the lap, as we see Stoll got by him as well. It's the straight line speed and that top end gear not having any more room to go. He's capped out when he's in the draft.
Yeah, remember what I was saying earlier on about, it's all tactical about how the drivers have decided to set up their cars. Do they go for the long straights of the banking, or do they go for the tighter technical infield section? And it does look as though De Bruyn has definitely favoured the latter option. Is the second they get onto the banking, the two cars in front, they just drive away. He's been right on the tail of them all the way throughout. He hasn't got this decent acceleration, and the top end of the car just doesn't quite seem to match the guys in front, so he makes up all his time in the infield section.
I would ask that, like, maybe... Oh, Chris in the front!
Oh dear. And that's... is that both of them gone, or just one of them? I think that's both of them. So yeah, Icazo dropping it, and then somehow Stoll avoided him, although managed to drop the car himself. But Luciano Icazo, unfortunately, a costly error. That's really going to hamper his chances now, as he will try to get himself back up into the top 10 again. But Luciano Riccardo, well, he is in P10 behind George Angelidis, but that's his rhythm very much catered for. That's how easy it is to lose concentration.
There's so much. So, I mean, and we had obviously the dust is being kicked up. This is, I don't know, the 30th time they're coming through the bus stop. That rhythm, you just can't seem to settle into it with these cars because they don't want to let you take it easy. You're always fighting it. Some of these guys, again, is not to keep barking up the same tree here, but again on that H pattern, it's just adding more and more fatigue to the drivers who've been going at it now for an hour and 20 minutes, plus your warm up, plus your qualifying. We've been in the car here for a bit.
So Borman, Smith, El Idrisi, Abdallah, Whitehead and Zwartenbal in the top 6 from Stoll, De Bruyn, Angelidis and Luciano Riccardo. This is an absolutely sensational battle. Kari Keskinen and Yuri Geisen from Joe Miller, Jacob Kowalski, Brian Hall, Jerry Chen, Eric Moyne, Leone Gennari, Gilles Lalonde, Steve Carman is 20th from Guy Sever, then 22nd is Paul Venter ahead of Stephen Miller. And then we've got Tom Mountjoy ahead of James Bunn, Matthew Sibagnoni, Eugene Mazur, Oscar Dancourt, and William Miller. Those are the drivers still running. 29 of them still going. This is going to be a very tough final hour. We can start to see now that the nighttime phase is slowly shifting. It will get to dawn very soon indeed, and obviously the cars will be finishing under daylight once more. The Kowalski just gets up the inside of one of the Sauber Mercedes. I think that is Sibignoni he's just lapped there.
Right on the back of Miller, going on the back here. Not the best exit.
Ooh, what a moment for Kowalski, and I think he just flirted with the wall on the far side as well. That is so tricky to get on top of. The car just snapped away big style. He was so lucky to catch that. So now we go back to the battle between Whitehead and Zwartenbol. Zwartenbol just catches the curb on the inside. A little bit of acceleration off the oh, he's just tripped off the white line there. So easy to do with this phase of the race. You've got so much pressure, and he's been staring at the back end of Whitehead's machine for so long. It's so easy to lose the traction of the car.
Keep in mind as they're coming out of that last hairpin too, where the track limit is to get onto the banking, and it looked like he was pushing it a little too close, and he corrected that, like, you know, let's not get that track cut warning.
Yes, indeed. Very, very easy to do. Now here is Zwartenbol getting past Jerry Chen. Now, Jerry Chen is going to be the one to move out of the way, or is he? Because Zwartenbol hasn't quite got the speed advantage without
Chen's got the fastest car. He's got the fastest car.
Now he gets him around the outside, but he had to think twice about lapping him there because Jerry Chen actually had a pretty fast car underneath him, and Zwartenbol had to remind him, you're being shown the blues, get out of the way. I've got to get past you here. I'm racing the guy in front of us. So Zwartenbol having to be a little bit careful in lapping Jerry Chen. As we now look at George Angelidis running in 10th place. Now he's caught right up to, he's been passed by Luciano Icazo, who dropped it in the bus stop a couple of laps ago and dropped it to 10th place. But Icazo has caught and passed George Angelidis. Angelidis is now trying to stay with him. But that just shows you how tricky it is as they squabble away for position. Angelidis is actually really wrestling with the traction of the car in the slower apexes. You kind of get the feeling that Icazo's car is slightly better set up for the infield than Angelidis' car is. Perhaps Angelidis and the Lucky Strike Mazda, they decided they wanted to go for the top end speed over the mechanical grip of the infield.
And that's the key then. You hang with them as much as you can through the infield. You get that absolute banger. So he was looking in the middle there, right? So he cut his entrance. How good of an exit does he get? It's pretty good. Now we want the draft. Oh, the top end of the China is no joke either. Look at that top end.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the difference. You know, that's the two differing versions of strategies. It's always so fascinating to see which team decides to go for which strategy. Do you go for high-end aerodynamic speed of the banking, or do you go for the mechanical grip? Look, George Angelidis is able to gain a massive amount of time on Luciano Icazo, and then they go onto the straight and onto the banking again, and Icazo just drives away. So you get the big difference between the strategies. It's hard to know which is actually faster over the course of a lap as well, because you have got some decent straights in the infield section, so it kind of counteracts itself. 1 hour to go here in the Daytona 2.4, the first race of the Virtual World Sports Car Championship 1991 series from Champions Motorsport, brought to you by Storm Gang Simulations. This really has been an amazing start to the season, and if this is what we can expect to see all year long, bring it, and bring it squared. That's what I'm out for. Ross Smith running in second place, with Marwan El Idrisi running in third position and leading the pro battle at the moment in front of Ahmed Abdallah, who has come up from 41st on the grid to 4th, just taking it nice and easy. Slow and steady wins the race, it seems, or certainly gets onto the podium, at least in the Purist category. This is Oscar Dancourt that we just saw very briefly, the Peruvian. We haven't seen much of him in the race. His brother Santiago, sadly, out of the race earlier on in the day. And here comes Keskinen. He wants another piece of George Angelidis. We saw Keskinen have problems earlier on, but he's not done yet. He wants a piece of Angelidis, and he's got a faster car in a straight line. Here we go. Looks to the right, thinks better of it, gets back in the draft, pulls out of the draft, but look, you just hit a wall of dirty air.
Exactly. As soon as he gets out of the draft, he no longer has that advantage. It's almost instant he loses that speed advantage. And of course, George has the inside line. He has to go the long way.
So the thing is, essentially, you've got to get into the draft and then start to go for it in the braking zone. But then you have to basically blip the throttle behind Angelidis. Either that or you've got to get a perfect run off the final corner banking. Look, you can see the difference is staggering. In the draft, he's got a faster car. Out of the draft, Angelidis pulls away again.
Now he's at the inside, though.
Yeah, now he's going to have the best positioning. So Angelidis is still going to be slightly quicker in a straight line. But crucially, Keskinen's going to have the inside line. But is he going to be forced with a little bit less maneuver? Yes, he's got it. Well done from Keskinen. That was a hard overtaking move to pull off. And he managed to keep it together.
That was as tight as you could get as well, because Keskinen was just clipped the grass ever so slightly. And if that was a bigger clip, obviously he's on the inside for a left-hander, and if he drifts out wide, that's a collision. And we know these cars are not easy to control in those hard braking zones. We've seen people going wide at turn 1 all race, so amazing overtake.
Yes, indeed. I mean, fair play to the drivers when they have survived the incidents. I mean, good luck to those who are creating a highlight reel for this, because you're going to have so much material to choose from. This is epic stuff. Now we're watching Sever as he battles away with Lalonde. Now this is quite significant. Gilles Lalonde and Guy Sever battling away for the AM victory. As Lalonde is in pro, apologies. Lalonde is in pro, Sever is in AM, but obviously the battle for the AM victory is currently being played out between Moyne and Gennady. So Eric Moyne and Leone Gennady are together on the circuit. They are 17th and 18th place. There's half a minute between them. As now Whitehead is going to get alongside Swattenball and gets back through. Does he? Swattenball's still sticking it round the outside. Job done. Nicely done from Whitehead. Turn it in. Don't get too wide. Car wants to get a little bit squirrely, but that's fine. Whitehead takes the place back from Swattenball.
So our comfort food battle did switch back at one point in the last few laps, but it didn't last for long. Jason back in front.
Yeah, we've got a few more fries at the bottom of the paper bag out of this battle, yeah, haven't we? There's still a few more bits and pieces left of it, as Whitehead and Swattenball still giving us plenty of entertainment. Now, Keskinen, having
he's just had an off.
Yeah, he's had an off because Angelidis has got back through again. So all that hard work from Kari Keskinen has unfortunately been undone, and he's got to go after the Lucky Strike Mazda driver all over again. So as they work their way through, there's Swattenball. Again, just trying to get back on terms with Whitehead. But the Nuki Monster and Noon Racing Peugeots are running first and second. It's the same problem again. Well spotted, Troy. The same problem again with the top end limit.
It's such an advantage. Like in the draft, he's pushing it, of course. And again, we don't know, right, with all the little collisions that may have happened, or potentially that aggressive overtake that happened earlier, does that knock the aero? Because it will hurt in R Factor 2, especially when you get a knock like that that messes with your front bumper area, front suspension area. You can just lose that, few kilometers per hour. And of course, when so much of the lap is in straight line running, that not only adds up over the race, it's very clear to see in a battle like this if the car is a little bit damaged.
Ooh. Look how close they were to the wall then. Goodness me, they couldn't quite stick it to the inside apex. Sorry for cutting you off, Troy, but the car started to drift for both drivers, not just for Swattenball, but also for Whitehead. They got very close to running the wall on the high side there.
Every inch and then some. The problem is, when there's a wall there, there's not really a then some. So just every inch is plenty enough.
Absolutely, you really don't want to be running that gauntlet. Through the left kink. Snatch a little bit of curb. Brake, turn in. A little bit of curb back on the power. Try not to use too much of it as Kari Keskinen gets back on terms with George Angelidis. Angelidis tucks in for the inside line a little bit more. So here they come again, through the kink. Catch a bit of curb. Brake, brake. Don't get the car locked up. They both stay off the curb to get a little bit more power purchase mid-apex, but they're not able to get as much speed off the turn. So they don't have as much racetrack to play with when they keep the car in the middle.
And really tight lines from Keskinen through this whole sequence.
Yeah, he's really starting to get back on terms with Angelidis. Here we go again, in the draft. But surely the same problem's going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, same again. It's out of the draft and just hits a massive wall of filthy air. He can't do anything about it as another penalty sadly comes the way of Matthew Simeoni. Was that a bit of a hesitation from Angelidis in the brakes there for the bus stop? It kind of picked his braking point, and Keskinen was not prepared for it.
And Keskinen, I think, got a better run out of it because George was a little bit offline through the bus stop. So, but Keskinen, it's just this is a problem. So he needs, I think, stay in the draft all the way until that final turn, and then cut back inside again like this, and stay there and brake late.
The thing is, Angelidis does have his own race to run, and I know he's racing against Keskinen, but he's got to think about the long-term game plan here as well. He lets Keskinen go, but he makes him work for it a lot harder than he did the first time round. So Keskinen is through. Mind you, he did have to slip on the boxing gloves very quickly and get a little uppercut there to Angelidis. Oh, and there's an off in front of them. My goodness, he was distracted by a car that was off just behind him. Now, who is that that's gone? Because we've had a car just trip off the circuit there and it's not moving. So are we about to see the 13th retirement of the race? It is a stationary, I couldn't quite make out which car it was. I think it was just a brief off. I don't think it was a full off the road. It might have been William Miller actually going off the road there. But there's Simeone still picking them off, still keeping himself on the march of things despite having the penalties that he's taking and despite as well having the gamepad that he has. I mean, it takes a real character to decide to go racing in this with all that. Now, this is Chen versus Moyne. Now, Moyne, this is important because Eric Moyne leads the AM race. We haven't seen much of Eric Moyne all race long, to be fair. And now here he is leading the AM category. It's been, for most of the race, Leone Gennari who has had the job done. But Eric Moyne has been very smooth, very solid, very consistent. Not spectacular, but certainly incredibly quick. And keeping it nicely pointed in the straight line. And that's been enough to put Eric Moyne into the lead of the AM category, 17th overall. He's got Gennari, Sever and Venter all pretty much together with him in the race. But Moyne is actually putting pressure on Jerry Chen for race position. He's not so bothered about class victory in the AMs. He wants to go for it. And of course, for the AM drivers, when you're battling with the pros like this, every single race you do takes you one step closer to the pro category.
Right, and it's a self-classification, and there are manual moves if you're a little too performant. Let's say it is intended to keep things competitive. However, Monet has a 30-second gap over Gennari behind him, and he is leading his class. So this is a question. It's fun to race, it's fun to push it, but do we want to settle and get that class victory? Because we're not under threat from behind. But if he's faster than Jerry Chen, then that's an obstruction. Right now he can't run his pace, so he does need to get by. There's all these question marks that come in. Again, they're in the same machinery, just different classifications.
So the continuation of this battle as Moyne continues to lead in the AM category. The leader in pro is Marwan Iladrisi, running third place in the Nissan. And the leader overall is, once again, the Nookie Monster himself, Ben Borman, in the Peugeot 905. Excellent stuff so far from them. They go on to the banking once again, and Eric Moyne leading the AM category. Now, this is Sever versus Venter. This is for third place in the AM category, and they are very close together. That's how close they are to each other. And just a little way in front of them, I think that's Gennari. So Gennari is only about... Oh, no, there is a bit of a gap between them. My apologies. There's 41 seconds between them. I assume that was Gennari in the mix as well. We've had so many battles, but Venter is now in front of Guy Sever. So Venter has made his move, has gone into third position, and Guy Sever in the Silk Cut Jaguar desperately trying to keep it in the straight and narrow. 15 minutes to go. It's not going to be long before the sun comes up.
Well, we're contending with traffic here, even in the AM category, of course. That doesn't mean they're back markers. They're in the midfield overall, and they are contending with lap traffic as well. And our comfort food has swapped positions again.
Indeed it has. Pit stops. Here we go. Smith is in. Smith is in second place. So Ross Smith makes it... Oh, that's not quite... That's not quite as straight as it needs to be, is it?
You know, if it's in the lines, it counts.
You've clearly been doing your dot-to-dot quite well recently. If it's in the lines, it counts. It's fine. You're suited to having children one day. Those colouring books are going to be neat and spotless. Smith is going to be out of the pits, I think, in about 5th position. I think he'll slot in just behind Swartenball. Whitehead is in pit road as well, actually, I've just spotted. So Jason Whitehead, or at least he's going to be pit lane bound, I do believe. So Whitehead, I think, is going to be pit lane bound this lap from what the timing screen says. It says P. Yep, there you go. That's how you know. Look how fast you come into the pit lane, and then you've got to slow down, slow down, slow down. Box.
Oh, he's hit the wall.
He has hit the wall on the way in, though. So easy to do. That's going to damage the car big time. That's going to make it a little bit tricky when he returns. In fact, he's actually missed his box. Yeah.
He said to reposition, he went too far to the wall, obviously, because he hit it, but...
Yeah, that's the danger. And now into the pits as well, I noticed there has come Guy Sever, so maybe he was nursing a bit of an issue. So Guy Sever is in pit road as well, and that's... he just lost the position on the road to Paul Venter, so maybe he had a bit of an issue and decided to accelerate the pit stop, as it were. There goes Stephen Miller. So Stephen Miller in the Speed Details Jaguar, and there's Vartenball trying desperately not to trip over the number 6 Porsche. So a bit of a tricky one. Vartenball is now P4 as a result of those pit stops. Ahmed Abdallah might want to stop the race right now because he's in 3rd position. That's the highest he's run all race. 3rd place from 41st on the grid. Any driver who says qualifying has hampered me, I can't win from there, balderdash. Ahmed Abdallah has just made up 38 places from the starting grid. So anybody who thinks they can't win the race from last, you're not trying hard enough. Ahmed Abdallah has just done an amazing job.
It's not a sprint race. I mean, you could argue it in terms of endurance factor. It almost feels like a sprint race because it's a single stint, but this is a long race. 2.4 hours. So much can happen. 40 cars. Yeah, never get exactly like that. We have a car off.
Yeah, there goes the Nissan off the road. Now, who is that? That's either going to be Keskinen or El Idrisi, I think. Now, was that El Idrisi going off the road there from 2nd position? He was fairly balanced and well placed. No, that's El Idrisi, so it must be the sister car then. So a little bit of a moment for Kari Keskinen, who ran off the road there. Well, unless it's one of the other cars that's in the traditional Nissan colour scheme. It could well be, of course. But Kari Keskinen, yeah, so Kari Keskinen is there with Ikazo, so it couldn't have been either of those two. I will get used to this. So Keskinen battling away with Luciano Ikazo at the moment. Come through the kink. Kari Keskinen at the scene of that little trip up for the Nissan. Ikazo being very protective of the inside apex. Keskinen being just a little bit more fluid in terms of his lines, just dropping it out a little bit wider. And then gets good purchase on the throttle here. He can get a good run on the slipstream. And let's see if he's got a chance in the draft. On the power. Timing, buddy. He's got no straight line speed at all. No straight line speed at all.
That's a huge difference. That has to be aero damage on the Keskinen car, and that it's got 45 minutes to go with that. So again, infield is one thing, but the easier place to be quicker is when you're in the quote-unquote straightaways.
Well, finishing top 10 will be a bit of a victory in and of itself, the way things are currently going. We have another retirement. I'm afraid it is the Lucky Strike Mazda of William Miller. So William Miller is out of the race, I'm afraid. So right now, on board with Jacob Kowalski, the man who's going to be spending the rest of his race fighting with his own car after spinning it and then being collected by the luckless and rather blameless John Uyan, who had nowhere to go but into the side of the spinning Sauber. And Kowalski picked up damage, but Uyan, broken suspension, race over. Very unfortunate considering he was running as high as P5 when that happened. So it could have been a very successful day at the office for John Uyan. We just no idea how it could have gone. And into the pits comes Kowalski.
And there's an idea of how well it could have gone because Ross is running 9th and has stopped for the 2nd time. They were sort of on a similar strategy of pushing it longer. So we'll see now as the other guys come through and have their 2nd stop. Again, if they're grabbing tires for a 2nd time with 45 minutes to go, which you very well could do, right? You could totally split it that way. It's completely up to you guys, up to your team. There's no right way to do this.
Oh, oh my goodness, that was Ahmed Abdallah. He was in a hurry. He's up in 3rd position, of course, so he was in a hurry to get to his pit box. As there he is, in position. Kowalski's in pit road. Yeah. Keskinen's in pit road as well. So Keskinen has chosen this opportunity to make the pit stop, and so too is Oscar Dancourt and Tim Mountjoy. So both of them in pit road as well. Startling. I'm still not used to seeing an esports race with no pit lane speed limit.
It's insane.
It's a big tactical battle for them, as Manuel Stoll is now coming down pit road. So Manuel Stoll in the 2nd of the Kowalski Saubers. There he is. He's actually made his way to his pit box already. So Manuel Stoll following his teammate in. And this is well, for a lot of drivers, this is going to be the last pit stop. There might be another pit stop to take, depending on tyre life and depending on when drivers are going for particular pit stops and how they're making it work in the rotation. But there is Wouter de Bruin, who for the moment, in this rotation of pit stops, is up in 4th place behind Zwartenbal, who has yet to pit. So Zwartenbal is in 3rd position. Iladrisi comes in. Iladrisi comes in from P2. So the Nissan driver who is leading the pro category. There is Ahmed Abdallah. Now he's rejoined in 8th place behind Ross Smith, but not by much. He's only 2 seconds behind Ross Smith. So he's made a massive gain, has Ahmed Abdallah.
Yeah, that's definitely an increase. And did he take tires is the question. It's so hard to time it when there's so much going on, so apologies for that. But did he take tires would be the question. If he has, we know he has a quick car. He was on pace with Ben Borg.
Well, this is for 2nd position overall now. And let's not forget that Ahmed Abdallah is right in behind Ross Smith. When the pit stop merry-go-round finishes, Smith is going to be 2nd, and Abdallah, I think he's going to jump Iladrisi. We've got to watch to see where Iladrisi gets out of the pits, but I think Iladrisi is going to fall behind Smith again, and potentially behind Ahmed Abdallah as well. I think he's going to leapfrog him. There's Iladrisi getting going. So is Iladrisi going to beat Ross Smith out of the pits, as well as Ahmed Abdallah? Is he going to jump them instead?
That was a very quick stop from Iladrisi. He may not have taken tires on this one.
I don't think he took tires. Yeah, I think he's tried to go for track position here. If he's been on the hard tires, and he's going to get out in front. There we go. Iladrisi a long way clear of Smith and Abdallah. So I think Iladrisi, deciding not to change tires, just tops up the tank with fuel. And if the tires feel okay, then why not continue and hope it goes the distance?
Hold on for 41 more minutes. Easier said than done, but go for it, man.
Absolutely. I mean, braver men than me have tried. He's certainly giving it everything he's got now. 41 minutes to go. And Ben Borman is due in for his 2nd and final pit stop. Do not expect him into the pits for at least another 10 minutes or so, I would say. He's going to probably try and stretch this out a little bit further if he can. And then he'll go for his final sprint splash and dash towards the end of the race. He'll give himself a half hour to just bring the car home, essentially. But there is Iladrisi. He's 1.2 seconds in front of George Angelidis. But let's not forget that Angelidis in the Lucky Strike Mazda still needs to make his 2nd pit stop. Of the drivers that have made a 2nd pit stop, Iladrisi is up in front in 5th overall. Then it is Ross Smith, Ahmed Abdallah, Jason Whitehead. This is of the drivers who have made pit stops, by the way. Kari Keskinen has made 3 pit stops, interestingly. I think one of those might have been a penalty. Zwartenbal has come into the pits in 3rd place, as has Luciano Icarzo. So both Zwartenbal and Icarzo are now in pit road, and that's going to promote Iladrisi to 3rd and Angelidis to 4th. We're on board briefly there with Stoll, as he was battling away with Keskinen. There is Kari Keskinen, who, according to my timing screen, has had 3 pit stops through the course of the race. I wonder if one of those might have been a penalty. So Zwartenbal and Icarzo both in the pits. They dropped behind Ahmed Abdallah, as they were expected to do, and they will probably filter in around the Whitehead-Keskinen squabble, although Keskinen is 19 seconds back from Whitehead. So Whitehead might beat Zwartenbal and Icarzo out of the pits, but they should beat Keskinen out of the pit lane, if that makes sense.
And we have the issue at well where Keskinen was actually stuck behind traffic that was on pace with him and didn't actually have, you know, a way by. So, and George is actually not letting Iladrisi get too far away.
So Angelidis, 4th position at the moment. There is Ahmed Abdallah, 6th position. I'm very impressed with what he's been able to do here at Daytona today. 41st on the grid, currently P6. That's astonishing.
And Smith has actually pulled a gap here. He's pulled almost 2 seconds. So either Ahmed had a little bit of a moment, or Smith just has the pace now into this final stint. Or Smith, almost touched the apron.
Yeah, he did. It was so close. You've got to be very careful where you position the car in these situations. Into the left, into the right, using all of the curb and a tiny bit more as well is Ahmed Abdallah. But he's there in 6th position behind Ross Smith. He's having a very solid run in 5th position at the moment. Zwartenbal in 7th. Jason Whitehead is in 8th place. Luciano Icarzo in 9th place ahead of Kari Keskinen. Then Manuel Stoll and Brian Hall. Yuri Geisen and Eric Moyne, who leads the AM category at this point. And there is the move around the outside from Keskinen. Going to try and go the long way round Icazo. Oh my goodness! That is an overtake for the ages.
And they came side by side through the kink as well, so that battle started 2 corners ahead, and it was completely clean the whole way. Beautiful.
Now, I have seen some overtakes on this track before, but round the outside in the right-hand hairpin of the infield? He's had his Weetabix this morning. Amazing.
And Keskinen, if I remember correctly, was the one that tapped the wall there as well, so I'm wondering if overshooting his pit box is what gave him the extra tick on his pit counter.
It's just absolutely extraordinary how he was able to pull off the overtake around the outside. Full credit and fair play. That was magical. So now the battle continues on the banking. Keskinen's trying to get well clear. Hello, sunshine. The dawn is breaking over Daytona. 37 minutes to go. And it won't be long before those headlights come off. Dawn breaks through. She's a clever girl, and she's joined us here at Daytona. It's going to be absolutely awesome. Oh, Swattenball still pushing it behind De Bruin. You can't push it too fast, otherwise it's going to snap away. But this is going to give drivers confidence. This is a nice little sign, a psychological wake-up call for the drivers. Nighttime is over, the sun shines out. Oh, Nicazo, big mistake! That was Keskinen getting back through again, was it? So Keskinen's made a mistake somewhere and Nicazo's got back through, and now the favour's been returned by the look of it.
Guys are going at it. The Keskinen battle is sort of leading us into that trying to break into the podium in pro. So there's stuff to play for here because it's not over till it's over. So even if you're fighting for 4th,
that's one of the Kowalskis. Oh, both of them have gone. Both of them have gone. That was Venter with him, I think. So Venter has gone off. Yep, there is Venter recovering. And it was one of the Kowalskis, I think, that he tripped over. Now, whether that was Jacob Kowalski or whether that was Manuel Stoll, I couldn't tell you, because Stoll was in and around Keskinen and Nicazo, but I think that might have been Kowalski, not Stoll going on. Oh, but Stoll goes off there for definite. Now, I don't know if that was Stoll tripping over Venter. I think it might have been Kowalski, actually, because obviously Stoll was behind them at the time of all of that, so I think that was Kowalski tripping over. But George Angelidis is coming to the pits as there goes Hall. They both go off on the grass. Hall trying to get past Geisen, and well, that was a little bit messy. And through goes one of the Nissans, almost collecting him on the way by.
And Hall eyes on mirrors as you're getting back on as well, because they were side by side going into the bus stop, and one had to go through the tire barriers, the other didn't. Now that's the gap, 1.4 seconds.
And into the pits comes Ben Borman. Race leader goes into the pits as Hall goes side by side with the Nissan, and I don't know whether that's unlap himself or whether that's lap himself compared to one of the other cars out there on the road. But a phenomenal stuff so far as we watch Walter de Bruin and Swattenball in P6. More of an update on our gamepad user, Matthew Sibagnoni, running in 23rd position of the 28 runners. So all those people out there going, insane that he would pick up a gamepad and go racing. He's not in dead last, he's not 20 laps back, he's only 4 laps off the lead with a gamepad. That's just extraordinary. And he's got 5 guys behind him. James Bund, Gilles Lalonde, Tom Mountjoy, Eugene Mazur and Oscar Dancourt. And all of them are in sim rigs. So fair play to Sibagnoni. If I were to, there's no way I'd only be 4 laps back on a gamepad after 2 hours. So that is absolutely astonishing. Now here's Geisen. He's caught up to Hall. He goes right. Has plenty of opportunity, but he's hitting the limiter side by side. Hall is still going to be there to the inside, but he lets Geisen go. That was the sensible thing to do there. He knew that Geisen had a little bit more straight line speed made up. Someone's overshot at the bus stop that they've just overtaken.
And I was going to say a lap ago it was these guys overshooting, right? So the cooler heads have prevailed this time around for take 2.
That's very true. And Geisen has been able to get himself back into 12th position, almost under the radar. Wood to the Bruin and Swattenball. The battle continues. And they've got a slow car in front of them by the look of it. So they've got to try and time this right. But Swattenball, you can see there, look, he's hitting the limiter. That's it. There's not much you can do about this now. So De Bruin is going to get by. Swattenball is going to follow him in. Is he going to follow him in?
Oh, and well, the backmarker didn't know what to do. Backmarker gets out of the way. Did compromise him a little bit, but yes, that that was as good as it could have been, I guess, with the Porsche trying to make the bus stop himself.
Well, I'm afraid that was Eugene Mazur getting out of the way, and in doing so, he went off onto the chicane, cut the course, and I'm afraid that the Zuzu Porsche has now picked up a penalty. So that's rather unfortunate for Eugene Mazur, who was just trying to do the right thing and get out of the way. But unfortunately, too many other incidents mean that if you add them all up, it makes a penalty.
Yeah, and the lift and coast into a chicane or a hairpin is always your best bet to let a faster car by, of course. So as we get further and further into this season, people will start getting used to the flow of traffic, and it's so many cars here at Daytona, so we'll start getting used to it. But again, that sort of lift and coast, just ease up on your braking and let the faster car go down the inside, especially if they're battling like this. Will always benefit all three drivers in the end.
Yeah, 28 cars still running of the 41 that started. Ben Borman leading the way from Marwan El Idrisi, then Ahmed Abdallah, who is in front of Ross Smith. So third position for Ahmed Abdallah in front of Ross Smith at the moment. Wouter de Bruyn and Bas Vottenbal, George Angelidis and Jason Whitehead, Luciano Ricardo and Manuel Stoll. And there's a very good chance it will end like this in the top 10. Then Kari Keskinen is 11th in front of Yuri Geisen, then Brian Hall and Jacob Kowalski, Joe Miller and Leone Gennady in front of Paul Venter and Eric Moyne. So that is Leone Gennady leading again in the AM category, isn't it? He's taken back the lead. Then it is Jerry Chen in 19th behind Moyne, Stephen Miller, Guy Sever, Matthew Simeoni in 22nd now for 28. He's actually made up another place. James Bunn, 23rd in front of Steve Carman and Gilles Lalonde, Tom Mountjoy, Eugene Mazur and Oscar Dancourt. And that's it. Nobody else is running. We've lost William Miller, John Huyan, Roy de Moink, Graham Duncan, Brandon Gant,
Contact with
Mark
the
Jones.
marker.
That's not gone well. That's not gone well at all. As Hall and Kowalski, battling for position, trip over Simeoni.
Sorry to cut you off there. Into the hairpin, we lost a little. I think Simeoni was trying to let them by on the inside, but they were side by side. There is no inside when you're already side by side. There's two of them there. Yeah,
unfortunately, he just didn't quite have his eyes faced on the mirror at the right moment, in the same way I was looking at the timing screen at the wrong moment. It's always the way, isn't it? The 23rd behind Matthew Simeoni is James Bunn, then Gilles Lalonde, Steve Carman, Tom Mountjoy, Eugene Mazur, and Oscar Dancourt. But the retirements, as I mentioned, were William Miller, John Huyan, Roy de Moink, Graham Duncan, Brandon Gant, Mark Jones, Donat Prodan, Johan Taveras, Roger de Klein, Tom Aiken, Maxi Petravki, Santiago Dancourt, and Jacques Vermeulen. That's it. Those are the retirements, 13 of them in this 41-car race. And we have just about got half an hour left of the race. There is Walter de Bruyn's big rival, Vottenbal, who is still staying within 0.7 of a second of him and has been for about the last 40 minutes.
And Jason's actually lost out here, of course. So we're seeing Jason almost 21 seconds back. So is that just the matter of taking tires during the pit rotation for Jason? And if so, it makes these guys' battle even more impressive because they were doing that intending to not take the second set of tires.
So Ben Borman has got the fastest lap of this race, a 1:32.386. Compare that with the next best fastest lap, which is that set by... Oh, a spin! That is Lalonde. Lalonde has gone into the barriers. So that's a big problem there. The tyre barrier for Gilles Lalonde as he drops it with half an hour to go. And that is a big problem for Gilles Lalonde in the pro categories. Into the pits comes Bunn. Now, is that scheduled? Yes, I think it is. Oh, it's a penalty that he's taking, I do believe. So James Bunn, unfortunately, having to bring the car, the Jaguar XJR, into the pit lane.
And speaking of Jason, he's caught up to the back of George, potentially, like we were just saying, Jason on fresh tires.
That's very true. So Whitehead versus Angelidis, take 3. It's going to be pretty close between these two drivers again. Whitehead just getting a little bit closer to the Lucky Strike Mazda of George Angelidis. Going for a slightly differing approach to the hairpin. Angelidis getting a good purchase. The daytime is now well and truly upon us here with 29 minutes still to go in the Daytona 2.4. What a busy calendar year it's going to be and what a fantastic season these guys are going to have. Daytona is almost at an end at the end of the first round of the championship. Then we've obviously got Sebring, Suzuka, Monza, Le Mans, Silverstone, the Nürburgring, MAK Corp, Hermanos Rodriguez in Mexico and Autopolis in Japan. What a calendar to take us all the way to October 29th at the end of this season. If you've signed up for a full year of the campaign by liking and subscribing and hitting the notification bell on all of the CMS racing channels. You can join the Discord group as well if you want to get a little bit closer into the action. Want to get on the grid, and you can certainly have the opportunity to do that. It's very friendly and laid back, but also giving those sim racers the desire they need. And here's Angelidis disappearing to our right as Jason Whitehead has nailed this one out of the bus stop. Cuts across Angelidis' line, no problems at all with that overtake. But this is the psychological plus point for the drivers now. It's daytime. They've gone through the toughest part as far as they're concerned in the psychology of it. The nighttime, they're almost home and dry. They may as well push it.
And Whitehead had the slightest bit of lock up there as well, so I thought we were actually almost going to see George sweep back with an up and under, but definitely late on the brakes from Jason to make that move.
I've just remembered what I was talking about before I interrupted myself with the wayward Gilles Lalonde, and it was fastest laps. Ben Borman has the fastest lap of the race. Nobody will be too surprised, but they will be surprised by the difference in lap speeds. 1:32.386 for Ben Borman. The next fastest lap was set by Jacob Kowalski, 1:33.7. That's just astonishing. That's 1.4 seconds difference between the two fastest cars in this race. That's just astonishing. And you can tell that Ben Borman has got the car dialed up. How on earth is he going to be able to keep this kind of form and advantage that he's got through the different courses through the year? He's going to have a massive test, and surely he can't win all the races at so dominant a canter.
It's impressive as well because again, these guys are doing with the clutch and the H pattern, so the pro drivers have a little bit of an easier time, obviously sticking with the traditional sequential that we're all used to in sim racing. So it just makes it that those are the top two times, and they're done with the exact same machinery and driver assists, which is none, that as the pro class. So their performance is just even elevated by that with having that clutch and H pattern at the same time. It almost makes me wonder if there's an advantage to having more control over the car.
Oh, surely not. Certainly not for these guys. Now, there is Geisen with the Martini-inspired colours of his wayward machine. Not so wayward at the moment, the Porsche driver. He's keeping it nice and on the island, actually, considering how tough things have actually been for him through the race. But he's worked his way back into a considerable fluster. And Yuri Geisen is right up at the sharp end of the field now, as we watch Zoltenball being lapped by the Peugeot of our race leader Ben Borman, just absolutely romping to the victory. Gennady is leading in the AM category, Venter now second from Eric Moyne. So that looks like it's going to be the podium in the AM category. Let's ride on board with Ben Borman on the back straight. High side on Jerry Chen with the sixth gear. The new teams are still keeping it as low as fifth gear on that main straight. Some of them have no choice, of course. But their gearing is very interesting indeed. Ben Borman seems to have absolutely nailed the setup to be fast in a straight line, but also smooth and consistent in the infield. That's the real way to win this race. You can have a really good car on the straight and narrow, but in the turns, it needs to be able to stop. And Gilles Lalonde almost turns in on our race leader, Ben Borman. He was lucky to get away with that.
And up until that correction, Ben's steering was so smooth. And that's what's helping him, obviously, with this raw pace, is there's none of that wheel spin, there's none of that tire scrubbing. All the momentum he is picking up in the corner is maintaining through the... Look at that exit compared to the onboards we've been seeing the rest of this race. There's 2 hours into this race, and his exits are smooth and crisp.
Absolutely. I mean, his rivals are going to be watching this back, trying to basically shout the Billy Connolly exasperated cry of despair. How does he do that? It's just absolutely astonishing to see how smooth he is. As now we've got Manuel Stoll being caught again by Kari Kaskinen. So Kari Kaskinen is going to try and close up on Stoll. Into the right hairpin. Goes a little bit deeper, but he's got good acceleration off that turn. They do change lines based on what time of day it is as well, because they can see a little bit more of what the road is throwing at them. Here's Keskinen. Back on the power. Twitchy off the apex. Gets back on the power. No problem at all. Gets a decent run off the turn. But it has absolutely, no straight line speed to Stoll.
Yeah, and Stoll has such a clean exit as well that that gap has just increased, and a little bit too far back to even get that, you know, that sort of pity draft, if you will, by having a worse exit. But Stoll actually has messed up the bus stop here.
Yeah, he has. Keskinen's going to get past him without any hesitation at all until he hits the dirty air. He just can't do anything about it.
And we were talking, of course, that I just think there's no way that Keskinen doesn't have some sort of aero damage that is absolutely ruining his chances of, you know, sort of pushing in, you know, to the top 10 overall here.
Yeah, he's going to rue the problems that he's had and think what might have been in this one for Kari Keskinen. The top 10 finish is still doable as we look at Luciano Icarzo as he tries to close up on the Lucky Strike Mazda of George Angelidis. For those of you enjoying the broadcast, a lot of that goes down to the boys.
Keskinen's made a lunge.
He has indeed, yes, sorry, I was going to be complimentary, and then Keskinen decided to nick the compliment out of my mouth as he goes for the move himself on Manuel Stoll. Excellent stuff. And makes the move stick as Stoll just drifts a little bit too wide, really. He's lost out.
Are we losing out on tires here, I wonder? Because he's so fast in the straight.
Again.
And Keskinen's consistency in the infield has really helped him keep up, and Stoll maybe made a mistake in T1.
Yeah, this has been the one mistake for the Kowalski Motorsports team, isn't it? This has been their one error all race, essentially. And it's been that they haven't been able to look after the tyres very effectively.
So how does straight line work here? Because you can see the difference. He's faster in the straight, and now he's going to have to draft. That's two boons for Stoll.
That's insane pace difference in the slipstream. The trouble is he's got no grip in the corners, so then he goes through the bus stop, has got way too much oversteer, which he's had to correct with a little bit of counter steer, and then gets back on the power, and look, he's just eating the road. He's really starting to hammer that gap down.
4/10 in just one turn on the banking. almost a full second on that run. So now here's the problem. Keskinen's got the better car in the infield. So Stoll will pass him on the straight if he can keep the pace during the infield. Will the tires let him? That's the question. It doesn't look like it. He's really struggling to get the car turned in.
The Peruvian, Oscar Dancor, has just picked up a penalty, unfortunately. But the big debriefing conversation at Kowalski Motorsport after this is, how do we get on top of these tyres? Because we both know, having looked at it, Troy, looking at the way that the drivers have been performing in both sides of the garage for both of the competitors, for Manuel Stoll and Jacob Kowalski, who are now 11th and 12th, by the way, they've had arguably one of the, if not the fastest car. The problem is that they can't make their tyres work.
And it's going to be so frustrating as well. But here we go.
Up to the bus stop. Left. Right. Slower car in the way for Keskinen.
Yeah, traffic may have hindered Keskinen's run. It might even be a team car, but Stoll did not have the mechanical confidence to push that bus stop himself anyway.
But now he's got the draft of two cars. This could be the chance for Stoll. He's gaining. He's not going to split them on the middle. He's done it.
Very wide.
Oh my goodness. Manuel Stoll splits the eye of the needle at 200 miles an hour. Ah, take a bow. Move of the race. No problem for Manuel Stoll. Boom. Thank you and good night.
Just beautiful. And now, so he, again, has the disadvantage in the infield. Keskinen's right behind him. The sister car is out of the way. It's the two of them now with back markers ahead of them. So how does this pan out?
I can't get over that. That was amazing. Such a great overtake from Manuel Stoll. Just when you think it's going down the drink and nothing's really working, as Carmen goes out wide. So Steve Carmen just drifts the Salva off the escape road there. But I tell you what, Manuel Stoll, he may not get the result he wanted today, but he'll look back over that one. And that one will be a gift that he'll just replay over and over again in the Discord stream later. Everyone will be sick of it by Tuesday. But that's an absolutely awesome overtake. Just, you live for an overtake like that. You wait for an overtake like that as a sim racer for weeks. And that's one he's definitely going to be looking back on with a wry little grin.
Yeah, forget the tire strategy. Look at that. Oh, Keskinen has had a big off with the back marker.
Yeah, Keskinen, he tagged the side of the Jaguar, so there was nothing he could do. Neither driver really communicated to the other what they were doing in reasonable time, and Guy Sever tangles there with Keskinen. So that was clumsy from both drivers there, really. Keskinen obviously trying to keep himself up the inside. That was low risk situation. He should have just let Guy Sever go. Meanwhile, Sever wasn't really aware of the fact that Keskinen was there alongside him. So I think that was clumsy at best from both drivers. Now, one of the Team Nissan cars goes out a little bit wide in turn one. Is Keskinen going to be given plenty of time to get by?
Yeah, take the inside, take it.
No problem. So the 84 gets out of the way.
But now we've lost out. I mean, the battle board doesn't even show of Stoll anymore. We've obviously lost out so much speed, and with Stoll having the straight line advantage and Keskinen having the infield advantage but stuck in traffic, Stoll has a massive gap now.
Now, I'll tell you, of the two drivers in this race, Stoll and Keskinen, I'll tell you who's going to have sweated more over the course of the race, and that's Stoll, because he's obviously got to be a bit more physical with the car in the turns than he does on the straight. On the straight, he can just hit the warp speed button, the throttle pedal, and just disappear along the banking and get back on terms with anyone he's fighting with. But in the turns, he's basically in a wrestling match with the car, trying to get it to point in the direction he wants it to go. Here's Icazo, and it's storming past the back marker. And he's going to go for another one. Why would you risk it? He doesn't in the end.
That was actually the car before. Yeah, right there. That's Jason. That's for position 0.02 of a second interval because they're side by side. That storming pass down the straight was not the marker. This is the back marker here. Almost on him.
Careful, Gilles. That was very nearly Gilles Lalonde tripping over Icazo. And I thought I saw on the timing screen there, I thought I saw on the digital readout that he's just picked up a penalty. He has just managed to pick himself up a penalty. Well, I've been told that we have two more retirements from the race. Oscar Dancourt appears to have joined Brother Santiago out of the race. And unfortunately, I think we just had a DNF from Matthew Sibagnoni, who has been pushing very hard indeed. While I fear he has just dropped it. And Sibagnoni, I'm afraid, may have just retired from the race after such an incredible drive with only 16 minutes to go.
This draft difference.
That's
the draft difference. He was so far back. I'm sorry to cut you off, but that difference must have been 20 kph or more. That was an insane amount of difference. I would expect an easy pass here. Look at that.
That's two different classes of car, isn't it? That's an LMP2 versus an LMP3 by comparison of speed. So astonishing work there from Icazo and Whitehead. But look, Icazo's just got past Whitehead. Sayonara, I'm out of there.
Full second ahead on the same straight. So that was almost 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds net lap time gain on that one straight with the draft. Insane.
Well, Whitehead is struggling for grip by the look of it. Can Luciano Icazo catch and pass Baz Zoltenball? He's going to try and pick up as many places as he can here, Luciano Icazo. He's in 7th. And he's currently only 3 seconds back from Baz Zoltenball, so he could make it into 6th position before the end here. No trouble at all. He's just got to keep the car pointing in the right direction. He doesn't want to grain the tyres too much. Meanwhile, Whitehead looks like he's already grained the tyres too much. He's really struggling to keep that car pointed in the right direction.
And we're talking about Zwartenbol ahead was a 1.5 seconds slower on the previous lap. So that 3 second gap is very possible in 15 minutes.
So onto the banking goes Jason Whitehead. How close is he going to get to Icazo? The answer is not at all, because Icazo's got a much faster car underneath it. Look at that gap. That's in a lap. That's absolutely extraordinary. As over the curbs, left, right, left, onto the banking once again, and Luciano Icazo is already setting his sights firmly on Baz Zoltenbol up in front. As we watch Miller, I think this is, in the Nissan. Very similar colour scheme to that of the cars that we've seen from Kari Keskinen battling away with Marwan El Idrisi. Same car, slightly different livery between the two, as we watch Miller close up on Hall. Now, looking at where we are, Joe Miller has been incredibly quiet in this race. He hasn't really covered himself in infamy, but he's kept his nose clean and his ear to the grindstone. He's in 15th place now, behind Brian Hall in the Hall Brothers Jaguar. But Joe Miller has just been steadily ticking away these laps, getting on with it. He's only 3 laps down from the race leader, Ben Borman. He goes wide around the outside. Hall protects. This could be a tasty little battle if it continues to brew.
Yeah, and it was a defensive move from Hall. It wasn't a typical line, so Miller did have more momentum, did open up the steering a little bit, and Hall's a little bit wide there. That's wide.
Is indeed. Someone's got to yield, someone's got to give, and it's Hall. Hall is the one that finally yields, but he's going to come straight back at the Nissan in front of him. Can the Jaguar put it up the inside line? No, he's not quite going to get the speed back off the turn. This is fascinating from Joe Miller. He gets himself up into 14th place now. And Ben Borman leads the race with just 12 and a half minutes to go. So close to the end of the first race of the Virtual World Sports Car Championship 1991 series by Champions Motorsport, brought to you by Storm Gang Simulations. There is the man leading, and he's got his teammate in front of him, who is running in 4th position. Ross Smith could have been 1-2. Ross Smith does the teammate thing, moves over, lets his teammate go. No worries at all, as the Noom lets the Nookie go through. It's Noon Racing and Nookie Monsters, the two sister cars, as it were. And great stuff from Ben Borman, who has been in the lead of this race since the start. And because he was the latest driver to make a pit stop in the first rotation, Ben Borman has led every single lap of this race. He's on 82. He has literally led from the entirety of the start of this race. And yet, having said that, on paper, that would make you think, oh, a bit of a boring race. Then he led every lap. Not on your Nelly. It's been absolutely amazing behind him. Borman's just been dodging the flotsam and jetsam, trying not to get into a tangle. Everybody else has had the race of their life out there at Daytona.
There's scarcely been maybe 5 minutes where two cars weren't over 1 second gap. So we've always, let me phrase that a different way, we've always had a second gap just like this, with Whitehead being caught out by the draft.
What a big lunge that was from Ikazo. I wonder if Ikazo had an off there, because that's the second time he's caught and passed Whitehead in the last 3 laps. So I wonder if Ikazo had a moment, went off the road.
Did.
Whitehead got him back. Yeah, we're told he did go off the road. So Whitehead having to get back into position, and then Luciano Ikazo making the move back again. Is he auditioning for Groundhog Day 2?
You know, Ikazo actually might have had a penalty served because he was only in the...
Oh, of course he did. Yeah, no, of course he did.
So it was a pit lane swapperoo, but we're back. We're back as things were, so the penalty actually hasn't cost him anything besides a little bit of exciting racing.
That has been absolutely amazing from the start, and it just continues. It's not got boring at any point in the race. You'd think a 2.4-hour stream of sports car racing in esports would eventually tail off after a while, especially with the race leader firmly stuck in position and having not budged since lap 1. Well, you obviously don't know esports the way we know esports. It's been brilliant from the start, and it just keeps getting absolutely sensational all the way through. 10 minutes to go, and for Ben Borman, it's bring it home, sunshine. 1:32.3, the fastest lap of the race, but he's still clocking in the 1:34s at the moment. The only driver that's really matching him for raw 1-lap pace at the moment is Luciano Ikazo, who's actually lapping quicker than him at the moment. So he's lapping faster than the race leader. Not that that's a panic for Ben Borman, who is over a lap ahead of Marwan El Idrisi, who is going to win the pro category. Who's going to win the AM category? At the moment, that is Leone Gennari, who is still just in front of Eric Moyne by 15 seconds. So Leone Gennari cannot afford to drop the ball for a split second here, because if he does, then Eric Moyne and Paul Venter, who are chasing him down, have a chance to snatch a place or two away. Here is the fastest man on track, Luciano Ikazo, in the Sauber Mercedes number 94, and he is obviously in the Purist category.
And he's actually storming right now. 2 seconds up on Bass in front of him. 2 seconds in 1 lap.
Yeah, a stunning drive and an astonishing performance from him. He really is eating up the road in front. He's clearly done something spectacular with his final strategy. Now,
Sector 2 alone, sorry, just one last one. Sector 2 alone, last lap, 1 second up. Sector 2 alone, that's the infield sector. So how does the straight line compare? And if Zwartenpol has better straight line speed, we'll have the draft here in the back, right?
Very true. No need to apologise cutting me off. If you spotted something, you've got to get in there. You've got to showcase what it is. We've got to follow it for the right to the end. Now let's check up on Ahmed Abdallah, who is catching El Idrisi, because the gap is down to about 7 seconds, I think. No, sorry, on the last timing screen I look at, it's about 9 seconds. But he is gaining ground. He's just done a 1:35.5. In fact, both of them have, so they're both in the 1:35s. So whoever makes the most mistakes over the course of the next 8 minutes is essentially going to give the other one a chance to take it away. But this is the absolutely rapid Luciano Riccardo. He's going to make mincemeat of Zwartenpol on the straight line. Look at that. Bye-bye.
Easy peasy. Going to be into turn 1 with maybe 4 car lengths advantage. Can take the full line.
Well, looking at the pace that Luciano is doing this, he's going to get 5th position because Wouter de Bruin is only another second up the road. There he is, Wouter de Bruin in 5th position. So Luciano Riccardo can finish up top 5 here. He's not going to have enough time to catch and pass Ross Smith because the gap is 30. It's about. Well, having said that, I don't know. He might just do something. You said he was gaining a couple of seconds a lap. He might just catch Ross Smith before the end. If Luciano Riccardo can have a clean pass on Wouter de Bruin, and it looks almost certain that he's going to get one on the back straight, he might just have time to catch and pass Ross Smith for P4 before the end of this race. It's not done yet for Luciano Riccardo.
Luciano's had a bad exit onto the back straight, though, so actually Zwartenpol is actually closer to him than Luciano is to de Bruin ahead, so we've lost out some pace here. Oh, I take that back. Never mind.
No, he's right there. He is right there. So as Luciano Riccardo goes out of the bus stop, we might just see a red Sauber pop up alongside us. Here we go. Up with the gears. Warp speed.
Warp speed button, aka gas pedal, all the way on the wall.
Thanks, mate. Sayonara. Absolutely brilliant. He's just shot past him. So that's 5th position. Now, the big question is going to be, is 4th achievable? Because we've got 6 minutes to go in the race, and there's a 10-second deficit. Challenge accepted. # mission impossible.
1 second advantage on the last lap over Ross. However, he was fighting during that time.
Oh, he's made a mistake. Look, he's dropped it on the grass there. So he manages to catch it, but he's lost a little bit of time and a little bit of momentum. So maybe that just answers the question for us. Now, question from the floor on YouTube. Tom Lane, are these races arrive and drive? Interesting question.
Yes.
Troy Guyan, they sort of are, really, aren't they?
Yeah, so the way this works is we have sort of a sign-up sheet to get your livery in and stuff like that. However, this is an arrive and drive series. You do sign up at the Champion Motorsports Discord. You get in there, get the mod, get the packages all installed in rFactor 2, and then the passwords will be in those Discord servers, right? So you can arrive and drive. Obviously, please put in some practice before you arrive. However, in terms of sign-ups or entry fees, none of that. Arrive and drive in the truest sense. You get in, you like the car, you pick your team, you pick your livery, and you show up in your race. We've actually had the turnout so high in this first round that, unexpectedly, not necessarily intended, we've split the grid into 2 servers. So there is a smaller second server going on just with the overflow.
Absolutely, and obviously, officially, when the race is all over, those 2 servers are going to be combined in terms of the aggregate times, and then the positions will stack up. So it turns out, obviously, we're talking about the fact that there are 27 race finishers at the moment. However, having said that, there's probably a few more in the second server, so I wouldn't bank on that just yet, because obviously knowing that there's a few other guys to race against in your server gives you that little bit of extra momentum. Here's Kari Kaskinen trying to get on terms with Angelidis, and with 4 minutes to go. Oh, was that a spin in the pit exit there? Very nearly.
Yes, and whoever's in the pit lane, they're really struggling to get out of the pit lane.
Was that Whitehead? That was Whitehead.
It was.
That was Jason Whitehead. So he's had to make a splash and dash at the end of the race there, and he's dropped to 11th behind Keskinen. No wonder he was slippering coming out of the pits. He didn't want to lose places because he's lost it to Stoll, he's lost it to Angelidis, and he's lost it to Keskinen.
It's absolutely for position. He was racing the pit lane to get out in front of these guys, and it hasn't worked out. Don't know if that slide made an impact or not. It might have done, honestly. He might have beat Keskinen without that wheel spin in the pit lane.
Okay, so we're told that the second server race is already over because obviously in server 1 there were delays. There were 12 cars in that race. We're already getting some candidates in the YouTube stream for move of the race. RK1 says quite definitively, Manuel Stoll. I have to say, I'm in agreement. That was a pretty ballsy move up alongside the two Nissans and decided, right, there's not a lot of space. I'm just going to split it up the middle along the main straight. That was absolutely phenomenal.
There's no candidates. There's candidate. It's the Stroll move splitting the two Nissans. It was amazing.
Just cool. Very, very cool. And if we're going to have racing like that, then we're definitely going to have amazing stuff to come. Now, David Anderson asked, what determined who was in the second server? Well, actually, the priority in the first server went to those who had registered a team and signed up on the entry list with original liveries and obviously a full-time entry. So the arrive and drive people, basically, who didn't sign up to anything to start off with, they are the ones who are more likely to go into the second server. Some of them are still in the first server, but the priority is certainly given to those with full entries, as Angelidis and Keskinen are having an amazing scrap for position.
They went out of Keskinen. Keskinen got it in T1, George in T2, Keskinen back in T3.
And we're not done yet, because Whitehead will want a piece of George Angelidis now as well. 2 minutes to go. So when Borman goes across the line next time by, it's almost certainly going to be the last lap of the 2.4 here at Daytona in the first round of the Virtual World Sports Car Championship 1991 series from Champions Motorsport, brought to you by Storm Gang Simulation. Where is Ben Borman? We need to pick him up and figure out when he's going to go onto his final lap. There he is. He's just started one, actually, so we've got 2 laps to go, unless Borman decides to hang back, chill out, and cruise home.
Which he definitely could. You know, there's no reason to say you can't.
He's over a lap ahead of Marouane Ladrisi, so he won't lose the victory if he decides to cruise home. It'll all be down to the team whether they want him to do another lap or not.
I think if he got disqualified now, he would technically still win. Because he has to lap again. So you could actually just park it and still it's a Borman absolutely dominant. Whitehead, though, heating up.
It's been absolute magic. This battle is still going on between Angelidis and Whitehead in the closing stages. With 1 minute to go, they are still battling for 10th place, and Angelidis gets it back on Whitehead. He retakes the position for P10, and they are fighting all the way to the death. Awesome. Absolutely fantastic stuff. So where is Ben Borman? He will come home in cruise control mode. There he is in the Peugeot. He's actually just gone through the bus stop, so he may decide he wants one more lap, you know. Yeah, he's going to fast enough speed. I think he wants one more go around this Daytona 24-hour circuit, and why on earth not? So back to the Angelidis.
Gives us more time here with Angelidis. Yeah, exactly. It gives us more time here.
Yeah, we've got 3 spoonfuls of McFlurry left of this to go still, so we've got to get our last little bit of money's worth in.
We got to say, though, Whitehead's been in the thick of it the entire time. This whole race, non-stop, he's been battling and fighting, whether it's for 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. We're down in 10th overall, but still, we should say 4th, 5th on his class. He's always been fighting. It's just a crazy drive.
Yeah, it's been absolutely terrific. What a drive from him as he continues to push it right to the death. But the time has ticked down to 0, ladies and gentlemen. So Ben Borman is on his last lap, and still we're battling. This is De Bruyn versus Swartenball. This battle has pretty much been going since the start of the race. But yeah, Swartenball has made up the deficit to De Bruyn. Is he going to chuck it up the inside? You've only got 1 lap to get through.
This might be the last chance. Let's please keep it clean.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Go for it, my guy. What about the times last time? It was almost a second faster on the last lap, so this could happen.
Speaking of battles, Luciano Icazo has got the gap to Ross Smith down to about 4 seconds. So he almost caught him. He's not quite going to manage it, I don't think. And Ross Smith will just about finish up in fine style at the front end of the field. But as my timing screen dies, that's how long we've been going, Ben Borman is going to come around the final turn in victorious fashion in the Champions Motorsport Daytona 2.4 of the 1991 Virtual World Sports Car Championship. Ben Borman takes the victory at Daytona. Superb. He starts the 1991 season in majestic fashion. He's led every single lap of the race. Awesome stuff. And this is going to go to the line between Stoll and Angelidis, the way things are going. Angelidis is desperately trying to get there.
I think he's dropped off. Something must have happened here on this final lap. He's dropped a couple places and is losing some speed in the straight.
Yes, indeed. Well, it's going to go to Marouane El-Idrissi, who will take the victory in the pro category. But well done to De Bruyne versus Swattenbol. They come through at the bitter end after an excellent run. But the drive of the day has got to go to Ahmed Abdallah, third position, having started 41st and last. Here comes Ahmed Abdallah. What a drive. That is absolutely extraordinary. It's one thing to lead every lap of the race out in front, but to start dead last and to work your way forward to finish up in third position. Ahmed Abdallah, take a bow. That was absolutely phenomenal.
Third overall, second in class.
And a victory as well for Marouane El-Idrissi in the pro category. Ahmed Abdallah, what a comeback. 41st on the grid, 38 places made up. Not many racing drivers in any form of racing can say that they've done that. Ross Smith will come through in fourth position. Yeah, live it up, Ahmed. You've deserved it, mate. Excellent. And now Ross Smith trying to come through. Well, there's Luciano Micazzo doing some donuts at the end. Great fight back from him. He fought his way back to fifth position in the end. It's a good recovery. Oh, whoops. You meant to do donuts on your own. That wasn't a donut. That was more of a shoe pastry, I think, there from the number 3, Emmanuel Stoll, who easily has overtake of the race from most people's point of view.
They all deserve donuts, though. I mean, holy cow,
totally.
What a race. Did we even have a moment where we had more than a 2-second gap somewhere on track? I don't think so. I think it was...
I'm not sure.
Always there were cars next to each other for position, which is just what we want to see. What happens when you have a fantastic track like Daytona and so many cars on the grid. Thank you guys for turning out. You've made this amazing. And this is the product we get. We get beautiful sports car 91 racing.
What a great start to the 1991 season. It's been a magnificent job from our drivers. It's given us so much entertainment. And hopefully now a real championship battle on the march. 1991 has kicked off in fine style. Let's give you the provisional results from Server 1. Obviously, Server 2, we'll get a little bit more information from them as it comes. Stick around on the website for that. Ben Borman taking the victory in front of Marouane El-Idrissi. Then Abdallah, Smith, Micazzo, De Bruyne, Swattenbol, Keskinen, Stoll, and in 10th position, George Angelidis. There it is, the top 10 after an absolutely fantastic performance. The pro victory going the way of Marouane El-Idrissi in the Gasoline Aftershave Brothers Nissan. Third place for Ahmed Abdallah behind our race winner, Ben Borman, of course. Ross Smith in fourth from Luciano Micazzo, fighting to the death in the eSport AMG Mercedes. Walter De Bruyne in the Porsche, just ahead of Baz Swattenbol. Then Kari Keskinen, Manuel Stoll, and completing the top 10, it is George Angelidis in the Lucky Strike Mazda. Next up, Jason Whitehead just missing out on the top 10 in front of Yuri Geisen. Jacob Kowalski in 13th place in front of Brian Hall. The AM winner, Leone Gennari, got the job done in the end in the number 2 Porsche. Then Joe Miller in 16th place. Eric Moyne second in the AM category. Paul Venter is third in that. Jerry Chen 19th overall. And Guy Sever in the Silk Cut Jaguar P20. Then Stephen Miller in front of Gilles Lalonde, Steve Carman and Tom Mountjoy from James Bunn, and Matthew Sibagnoni, the last classified finisher. He did make it to the end. Absolutely incredible. The retirements from Server 1, Oscar Dancourt, William Miller, John Uyan after not being able to avoid Jacob Kowalski's spinning Mercedes, Roy de Moink, who was battling up in the early phase of the race. He should have gone a little bit further in the race and will be disappointed that he didn't do so. And then behind him, we had a few other retirements to count as well. Eugene Mazur, unfortunately, ending up as a disqualification after his battles. But we had so much drama. Apparently, we're told that Matthew Simeoni actually got disconnected in his final stint. So, in fact, he didn't quite make the finish. As I said, you can find all the final details and updates in Virtual World Sports Car Championships historic page. It really has been amazing, Troy. Action from start to finish. It never really gave up the ghost.
We never had a moment to breathe. We always had some comfort food battles to come back to so we could take a look at what was going on. And we had these consistent battles with the likes of Jason throughout the entire race. This was such a fun opener. Thank you, Jake. Thank you to all the drivers who came out. Thank you to the viewers. This was awesome.
Well, it's been an absolutely fantastic battle. I think all the drivers are worn out. They might not want to have an interview before the end. They've very much deserved their donuts. I'll get Tim Horton on the phone, don't you worry. So we're going to finish up here in the Virtual World Sports Car Championship, the first race of 1991, the historic championship, brought to you by Champions Motorsport and Stormgate Simulations. Troy, thank you so much for helping me with the play-by-play in the pits. It really has been a great start to the season.
Thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, indeed. Tune in. The next battle from VWSC is going to be right around the corner. There's more action from the 1991 championship on March the 5th, which will be the 1.2 hours of Sebring. But if you liked that, well, the modern cars are going to come out at exactly the same time, in exactly the same place, a week from now. The 2.4 hours of Daytona will happen all over again from a week from now, but it'll be the 2022 championship. Don't disappear. We'll see you a week from now. From me, Jake Sanson, and the rest of the VWSC crew, bye for now.